Good evening. Welcome to the regular council meeting of the Township of Whitewater Region for August 3, 2022. Council rose from closed session at 4:01 p.m. Direction was provided to bring a report to the August 17, 2022 regular council meeting regarding the active transportation land purchase. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on the behalf of the council of our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Please stand for the prayer. Almighty God, we give thanks for the great blessings which have been bestowed on Canada and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. Guide us in our deliberations as Township councillors and strengthen us in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. Grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to preserve the blessings of this country for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Amen. So at this time, I'd ask any council members if there's any disclosure of interest for this evening. Seeing none, move on. Thank you. Now we're going to item 4.1, Outstanding Youth Bursary Presentations. Reeve Riggier will call out the names and
Thank you very much, Mayor. So this evening with us we have July Kobus, Kylie Reiger, and Madeleine Tong. If you'd all like to come forward.
you must be July Kobus. Okay.
Okay.
And this is your certificate.
July Cobus, the Township of Whitewater region would like to present the Outstanding Youth Bursary to July Cobus. July has graduated from Jean Lajoie High School and will be continuing to university and the workforce. July has immensely contributed to the community through various school events and helping elderly people with lawn care and maintenance. She is also a significant member of many sports teams, including soccer, hockey, and basketball. The mayor is pleased to present this bursary to July. If you would just like to wait there. The Township of Whitewater region would like to present the Outstanding Youth Bursary to Kylie Reiger. Kylie has graduated from Opeongo High School and will be attending the University of Ottawa Health Sciences program. Kylie has significantly contributed to the community through various events, including the World Whitewater Kayaking Championships and the Beechwood Fair. She is also a remarkable athlete and will be playing for the University of Ottawa varsity rugby team. We are pleased to present this bursary to Kylie.
Madeleine Tong.
Thank you.
Somebody drive a black Chevy parked out front? Yeah. I just ran it.
Oh.
We'll be in a few minutes.
Straight in my driveway.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. She'll be up in a minute.
Okay, Madeleine. Oh. The Township of Whitewater region would like to present the Outstanding Youth Bursary to Madeleine Tong. Madeleine has graduated from Fellows High School and will be attending university for a criminology program. Madeleine has an extensive history of community contribution with the Beechburg Lions Hall, including helping with meals and roadside garbage pickup. She is also an avid basketball player and was a member of the school team for multiple years. We are pleased to present this bursary to Madeleine.
There were two others. Can you give us the other two names, please?
Certainly.
They're not present this evening.
So the other two is Jenna Thompson from Bishop High School. I'm sorry, Jenna Toms. And the other was Penny Gordon from St. Joseph's High School. Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations, ladies. Thank you. Oh dear, here's your bursary. Oops.
Okay, we're back. We are moving on to 4.2, future development. And we go to Ivan.
We're actually going to go to Brian Whitehead
Brian.
and Joe Kowalski. By Zoom.
Is Brian not,
Yeah, well,
is Ivan not with us?
he is, but this is a presentation.
Okay, so we'll go to Brian. Brian Whitehead?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'm joined tonight by Catherine Curry, who's going to help me with a couple of slides. So if whoever is controlling the Zoom meeting can allow her to take control at that point, it'd be appreciated. And I'm also here with Joe Kowalski, who I believe is in attendance at the meeting. I saw him take a picture, so I know he's there. So I'll just give a quick overview of our submission, and then I'm sure Joe will have a few quick things that he'd like to add. The purpose of this request is it's really a pre-consultation request to ask council and staff for support for the creation of 8 waterfront residential lots and 1 retained lot through the land severance process. We'd also like to confirm the scope and number of studies that would be required to support these applications. Just by way of background, maybe Catherine, could you show the key plan? I'm sure everybody knows where this property is, but the Voyageur Bay original holding includes approximately over 300 acres of land, and there's been a number of land severance applications over the past several years. Access to the property is off Grant Settlement Road to Dip Burner Road, down to through Pettigrew Road to Voyageur Bay Trail, and Pettigrew Road is a seasonally maintained township road. Joe has been making some improvements to it over the years, and the Voyageur Bay Road has been constructed to the township's private road standard. There have been 12 waterfront residential lots created from the original holding, 10 of which are on the Voyageur Bay property, shown with the arrow, which is now a 7.7 hectare property, or about 19 acres of land. There's been 2 other large bush lots created from the original holding. One under the name of Catherine Kowalski, which includes 72 hectares. That would be close to about 180 acres. And then Joel Kowalski on the bottom left, just over 100 acres of land. And then Joe, as I mentioned, is the 19 acres. And although there have been, although there are 3 large holdings there, it's the original holding where the number count relates to for land severances. Catherine, can you go to the next slide, please? This is the concept plan that we're requesting that the lots be created. It's showing lots 1 through 8, plus the retained land, and it's showing the previously severed lots. This request applies only to the portion that we're calling Voyageur Bay, as opposed to Joel's property, which I believe is called Eagle Ridge, and Katie's property, and then Joe can mention what that's called. But really, it's that is the purpose of this request, is to allow these lots to be created through your consent process. We've had some pre-consultation with Ivan before filing the submission, and it was felt that prior to allowing any more lots to go through the consent process, we should have council's permission. And the way this property has more or less evolved, it's with every additional lots that have been created, there have been corresponding improvements to the access road and to the area in general. And in this case, the next lots will be key to the evolution of this property, because it'll allow hydro in particular. There's an approved hydro design for this land. And it's the development's reaching a threshold where Joe can now, if he can get these lots created through consent, allow the hydro to come in. And he's also prepared to make additional improvements to Pettigrew Road for access. The property is designated waterfront in the Whitewater policies of the county plan. And there's a number of policies that relate to encouraging and objectives relating to encourage waterfront development. So this project complies with those permitted uses, and lots also comply with all the minimum standards for lot size and shape and that kind of thing. The number of lots that can be created through holding is governed by section consent policies of the county plan, and the county plan does allow for additional consent lots through consent, provided there's support from the local council. Key among those are the need for a hydrogeology study, the lock rating and drainage, as long as meeting the servicing requirements of the municipality, and most importantly, why a plan of subdivision isn't required for proper and orderly development. And we're confident that we can work with council to ensure that all the necessary studies are done to support these lots, and that good planning is followed through access, site development, lock rating and drainage, hydrogeology, and all the studies and the other studies, including archaeology and environmental impact study. In fact, due to time constraints and seasonal nature of some of the requirements, the hydrogeology, or not the hydrogeology, but the natural heritage or environmental impact study fieldwork has been completed, as has the archaeological fieldwork. So we're confident that we can do all the planning work that's necessary to ensure good planning is followed for the creation of these lots. And we would request staff and council support for considering through plan settings. That's my quick presentation. I'll just turn it over to Joe if he wants to say a few words.
Joe, you need a mic? Mike?
Thank you, Brian, Mr. Mayor, and Council. I provided all the councilors just a little bit of handout of my remarks. And what is very important, and really the sort of my reason for wanting to do Voyageur Bay, well, actually I have two reasons, but the first is, if you look at this, the what I call the National Whitewater Park of Canada. And I do that 30-some years ago. I did a houseboat trip on the Trent Severn Waterway, and while I loved the houseboat, I hated the trip because we motored by in 1 week thousands of cottages. And I'm not against cottages. I'm a developer, I'm a capitalist, but this is the last wild section on the most historical river of Canada, and it should be preserved. I went to Parks Canada 30-some years ago, and they were interested, they liked the idea, but because the other side of the river is Quebec, they had difficulty with that, and so I decided to do it myself. It's a very expensive undertaking, and it's because I'm at an age when most people would have been retired by a dozen years, and so I'm still not. And I use the proceeds from Voyageur Bay to acquire more property. There's a few sections left, and it is sort of my gift to Canada. I've been here almost 50 years. It's been a wonderful 50 years. My children are taking over the business, and so hopefully we'll have the continuity of another 50 years. And so that is really one of the reasons for Voyageur Bay. You can see it in this second handout I provided to everybody, how beautiful it is. But really what it also does is that it is the only real estate opportunity on the river. Most of you are familiar with ski resorts, and if you're a skier, you know, and if you want to have a ski chalet, you want it right on the mountain so that you can go skiing and ski right back to your accommodation unit. In fact, that is what Voyageur Bay is to kayakers. The first lot I sold was to Chris Thompson, the founder and owner of Whitewater Brewing Company. Chris lives there year-round with his young family, and he walked away from a very good career in the UK to, he went back to school to learn how to brew beer, and so he's here now and he's doing very well. But Chris is an ardent kayaker. He goes paddling and he paddles right back to his home. I also wanted to introduce to council Nick Beavis and his wife Mandy and their newborn Canadian. I assume it's Canadian now because it's what they call an anchor baby. Yeah. So Nick and Mandy come to Canada every spring for a month paddling vacation. And so they did that this year. And the little one came a couple months premature. And so that's why they're still here, and they are heading back to the UK shortly, but they want to be residents of Wilderness Voyageur Bay. They are ardent kayakers, and that's the kind of appeal that Voyageur Bay has to people that obviously a lot of people have moved to Whitewater region for the Whitewater, but not that many from across the pond. And so hopefully Nick and Mandy, what is the baby's name? pardon me? Leo will be residents of Whitewater region soon. So that's really my pitch on Voyageur Bay.
Okay, thank you. And welcome very much to our special guests. Congratulations on baby. Any questions before we move on? Councillor Mackay?
You say, it says in here about hydro. Is there going to be hydro for these houses when they build them?
There will be hydro if I get the severances. It's very expensive, and the way it works in development, and you know, most of you are either business people or know about business, that the profit is at the end. And so what I'm asking council is to support the completion, and that will provide the funds to bring hydro to Voyageur Bay.
So what guarantee that we have it once you get the 8 lots that automatically, as soon as people start to build, they'll have hydro?
Well, Councillor Mackay, I'm a man of my word.
Well, what if we say get the hydro, then we give you the 8 lots?
There's no money to do it. I couldn't afford it.
So what would it cost to take hydro down there?
Pardon me?
How much would it cost to take the hydro down there?
I have been dealing with Hydro One for 5 years, and I can tell you it is a very difficult, arduous process, and they have yet to provide me a price.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin?
Thank you. And I'm sure, Joe, just a question though. The road, are we able to get our emergency vehicles in there? Is it up to that kind of a standard?
Oh, it is, we do have a road agreement signed with the municipality. It is up to your rural road standards. Unfortunately, there was a fire at Pettigrew Farm this spring, and the fire trucks had no problem, and there's not a problem with getting fire trucks or emergency vehicles, and Mr. Claroux has been down there, and at the end of the road there is a 90-foot turnaround circle for emergency vehicles.
Oh, I should have known. I shouldn't have had to ask the question, but I appreciate the answer.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson?
I guess I see this as a presentation right now, and just wondering if there should have been a recommendation, and I'll ask our CAO with regards to that, what steps are next, and does council need to pass a motion, or can you direct Mr. Kowalski and Mr. Whitehead as to what the next steps are so that they know? Thank you.
So the next steps would be to, staff will bring back a report with information purposes for council to consider, essentially to pass a motion, if they so choose to do so, to permit the, 8 severances without the requirement of a plan of subdivision. So the approval authority, in this case being our local council, could authorize that those severances proceed. So staff will follow up at the next August meeting with a report to council requesting some direction whether they choose to proceed without a plan of subdivision for these 8 additional lots. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, please. Okay. We're moving on to item 4.3.
Yeah, public meeting right there.
And it is a public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment, part of Lot 6, Westmeath Concession 4, C.L.F. Gore line. And we'll turn it over to Ivan, please. This is a public meeting.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'll just read through a public meeting planning script, just as it pertains to the 5 zoning public meetings that we have tonight. If any person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Whitewater region before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council, to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Under Section 3411 of the Planning Act, if council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 120 days, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk. Section 3419 of the Planning Act states that not later than 20 days after giving notice of a decision of the passing of a bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submission at the public meeting or who made written submission to council before the bylaw was passed, may appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Thank you.
The first zoning amendment is for property located at Gore Line, part of Lot 6, Westmeath Concession 4, C.L.F. Will staff please give an overview of the application?
Yeah, thanks so much. So this first application is a condition of severance. Mr. Donald Brown filed 3 severance applications to create 3 residential lots. They were filed, in fact, through the offices of Adam Kasperzak Surveying on behalf of Donald Brown. Each lot is 2.5 acres in size, and they front on Gore Line. The present application is to modify the minimum lot area from 20 hectares to 1 hectare, so from 50 acres to 2.5 acres. And the reason for that is the lands are currently in the agricultural zone. So our zoning actually this particular zoning dates back to 1998. It's the Westmeath zoning bylaw. And in the present case, the lands in the official plan are actually designated rural. So they're not agriculturally designated lands. So our zoning bylaw, in fact, should be updated, but it hasn't. So this application is merely to reduce the minimum lot size to 2.5 acres for these 3 lots. So the application was approved by the Committee of Adjustment a number of months ago, and this will fulfill one of the few conditions that the applicant has. Thanks so much.
Okay, I understand no one is registered to speak and no comments were received. Correct? So we will move on to the motion. The motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the lands described as part of Lot 6, Westmeath Concession 4, C.L.F, Gore Line, from agricultural zone to agricultural exception 45 zone. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Reeve Regier, all in favor? Carried. Question?
Sorry, so what you're saying is, though, even though in Westmeath it's agriculture, in our new official plan it's designated rural. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. So it's not in the agricultural designation. It's in the rural designation in the county official plan. Yes.
Okay, which is Whitewater's official plan, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, which is the official plan that applies to our township. Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
We looked at this before in the, and that's very marginal land, so I'm not against that at all. Thank you.
Thank you. But we voted, did we get a full vote? Okay, so we will vote at this time. All in favor, oh, Councillor McLaughlin? Okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to the second one, which is part of Lot 7, Ross Concession 13. Will staff please give an overview?
Yes, thanks so much. So I would say this is probably the most complex zoning application for tonight of the 5. We do have Brian Whitehead with us, who's representing the owners, being Joe, John, and Catherine Kowalski. So if we could potentially get a map up, it'd be great to demonstrate which properties we're referring to. Essentially, these lands that are in question as part of the zoning amendment are landlocked, and they are located directly adjacent to the current River Run operation that fronts on Grant Settlement Road and fronts on the Ottawa River. So the lands shown in blue here on the map, those are the lands in question. They're currently in a zoning category of rural zone and environmental protection zone. And the applicant is seeking to change the zoning similarly to those lands that are part of River Run and Wilderness Tours, which is a tourist commercial exception zone. So essentially, the application here is to permit commercial uses under the tourist commercial zone, as well as a series of other additional uses. Those include sort of a resort, a lodge, a yoga studio, assembly hall, and a variety of other things that are, generally operate at the facility. The second part to it is because the property doesn't front on a municipal road or a county road or a provincial highway. The other exception is to permit access via a right of way through the lands that are held by River Run. So essentially, that this will be like a continuous use of the River Run lands for the similar purposes. So staff are supportive of the application. I won't go into great detail with all the policies. Generally, we should be supporting waterfront economic development when it's available. Certainly, the uses proposed here are not going to substantially alter the waterfront and rural character of the area. It's going to be a continuous sort of use of what's there now. So staff are supportive of this, and we'll welcome any questions from council. Thanks so much.
Okay, I see our applicant is present. Would he like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would. Ivan is right. There's no. I'm not really sure of the legal term. That property, when I did buy it years ago, it did come with a general easement across the farm holding connecting to Grand Settlement Road. So it does have legal access to Grand Settlement Road. And so our purpose for the property is the continuation of resort development. One of the things that I hope someday we'll be able to accomplish, and I've been trying for years, but is that we have the only practical access to Ottawa River Provincial Park. And I've been lobbying our member, and hopefully someday we will get Ontario Parks to open the provincial park. It's quite beautiful. It's spectacular. And so that would be this property, in addition to other things, would hopefully be the commercial hub for the park, if that ever comes to pass.
Okay, thank you. Questions from council? Seeing none? Oh, sorry, Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, just a related question, Ivan. Is it zoned economical back all the way to Grant Settlement?
So
I noticed it went yellow when Brian clicked the other area, but does that include any other sections of property on the other side of the municipal road allowance?
the lands that currently are operated by Wilderness Tours and River Run are all within a tourist commercial zone. So it goes all the way back to Grant Settlement through those lands. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I think it's an excellent use of our development. I'm surprised it wasn't like this before, but and I know I talked to Mr. Kowalski about this earlier, but I'm hoping to get some of that information. If we have a chance to speak with the Minister of Natural Resources in 2 weeks, and we're hoping to also lobby our voice to opening that park. So if you could provide some of that.
Thank you. I will do that for you.
Awesome. No, thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning categories of the property described as part of Lot 7, Ross Concession 13, from rural zone and environmental protected zone to tourist commercial exception 12, holding. Motion and a seconder, please. Reeve Rigier and Councillor Jackson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Oh. I'm sorry I missed that. Yes, you should have been able to speak after. I'm sorry, I missed that. Come forward to the microphone, please, if you wish to speak. And state us your name, please, for the public at home.
Yeah. Hi. So my name's Mark Bell.
Okay.
And, Hi, my name is Mark Bell, and I am a part owner of a property, actually the property that Joe described there that has the easement through it at this time, which gains legal access to that 33 acres that looking to amend the zoning on. So never done this before, but just had a few questions or concerns just as the property owner that borders up to this property as well as has that current access to it. So a couple things that I've just kind of been mulling over. One is, Joe just mentioned in the presentation for for Voyageur Bay about the preservation of the natural landscape and the riverfront that he is currently talking about right now, that River Run occupies, or Wilderness Tours occupies at the moment. So I'm just wondering what that means for this property. Yes, Wilderness Tours is there, previously River Run. But by changing this from a waterfront designation to tourist commercial, with all these different amendments for putting new buildings on, rezoning, what that means for those protections of the waterfront that is a part of this property, and whether that waterfront will continue to be protected in the future. Once if it is changed over to tourist commercial. The notice that we got in the mail is fairly ambiguous as far as there's, I forget if it's 11 or 12 different uses of this property. So one of the concerns that we had as the neighboring property owner is the intent to put one of these buildings or uses on the property. Is it to put all of them on the property? What particular studies or what the process will be moving forward, just to make sure that, we are preserving some of the natural landscape back there, or we're not, clear cutting it in just to put 10 or 12 buildings on that property. The other notice of concern, Ivan spoke to utilizing the right-of-way for the municipality to access this property on a permanent basis. I was wondering what that means for the easement that Joe currently owns on our property. I have spoken to Ivan about that, and he says that is a personal matter. As far as we purchased the property with this easement on it, we understood that. But with the future development going on here, changing it over from a waterfront property to tourism commercial, is the intent to build a road through our property, of which we currently operate a business on. We do cash cropping on the property. It's an agricultural property. My family and the other owners that purchased this, there's 4 owners on that property. We all hunt and recreate on the property. What does that mean for our future use of the property? So that was another one of those concerns. The other thing is it does neighbor that park. So there has already been issues with encroachment on through the property boundaries. There's been multiple cease and desists. I guess that would be more of a consult with Parks Ontario or with the M&R to determine what the use is for Wilderness Tours and that park. I know Joe said it's the only logical entranceway, and for most people that's correct, but there's a number of people that do access it from the water. My grandpa owns a property on the other side of the park as well. We are able to access it through that property. We've seen multiple lines of flagging tape and trails being put in there. I can't say who has done that in the past, but that is something that, we have seen since there has been more development on that property. So that was another concern of ours, just wondering what that means, and maybe that's already been addressed, but what that means for the park and preserving the park as it is right now. So I know there's lots of talking and lots of information in that little spiel, but I just wanted to maybe put forth some of the concerns that we have as the property owners and owning the property that has that legal access to that property and what that might mean for us. So thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. But before we go any farther, if we want to discuss this, we'll need a motion on the floor because we already passed. So Councillor Mackay, you'll put a motion to the floor to discuss? Yeah. To reconsider to discuss. Okay, we need a seconder. Councillor Nicholson, all in favor? Okay, it's back on the floor. So we'll open up to questions. Councillor Jackson.
So, Mark, do you own the property that's directly below the Ottawa River Provincial Park?
No, so that would be Brian Ditburner owns that. There's a 99-acre property that's directly below the park. We're the yellow highlighted area is.
Yes.
Joe's property
Below
butts
that?
up. Yeah, so Wilderness Tours butts right up to that where the right of, or the unopened road allowance or the right of way is currently. That's
So you have use of the unopened road allowance as well, as anybody else would that owns property on that?
I guess that would be correct. I don't know what you mean by the use of it as it stands right now.
Any public person can utilize an unopened road allowance?
Yes.
So do you actually abut up directly next to, you butt up to the road allowance that's there?
Yep.
Is what you're saying?
So if you see those, the agricultural property that's directly, that would be south of the property. So the fields, you can see that it's kind of cut in between the trees there. That is currently what we farm at the moment. So there's 106 acres there as per the tax bill. That is part of that property. We have, currently there's about 37 acres on that property that we currently farm. And then me and my wife Candace own the property beside that, which is another 66 and change acres with 14 tillable. So in total, we are farming about approximately 50 acres back there at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Is it a road allowance or an easement?
So you're speaking to me?
Yeah.
So so access to this property, so Joe bought this off Wilson Ray. Whenever they made that deal, Wilson included in the deal a an easement on that property to access the 33 acres. So there's the easement, which is the access to the 33 acres that isn't shown on that map.
Yeah.
The double lines would be what I would assume that unopened road allowance or the right of way there.
Next thing be a question to Ivan. How big is the easement, and if you want to use it, how much land are they going to lose to the easement?
Yeah, the easement part, I'm uncertain. I think you would have to search the title and deed, and maybe Mr. Kowalski or Brian could speak to that. I think it's probably just a gross easement over the lands in their entirety for access, but they could clarify that. But while I am speaking, I will speak to the first two of the items that Mark brought up. So environmentally, one of the requirements for any development to proceed here, so this land, while it's being rezoned tourist commercial, will be in a holding zone. And one of the requirements is that an environmental impact study be completed and that a site plan agreement be signed and registered on the property for the development. So that will examine environmental impacts. It'll examine, the cutting of trees and the like. and the impact on the environment. And then the recommendations from that study will form part of the agreement. So there are sort of placeholders that will ensure the protection of the environment. Secondly, the matter with the provincial park. So those lands are managed through provincial parks, through the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. So they are managing any concerns with encroachment. So the township itself doesn't manage those matters. And maybe what I'll do, the last thing I would say is this, is there's an existing access to the water here through the existing river run properties. I don't see the reasoning why we would allow a secondary access, commercial access, if there's already one that exists. I mean, it's probably not feasible, cost-wise, and it doesn't really make sense. I think we should be directing the traffic, commercial traffic, to the existing road network, and the goal here is that these lands are supposed to be used for the the extension, if you will, of river runs. So I don't anticipate there'd be a future entrance through your lands, Mark, but again, maybe just back over to Brian or to Mr. Kowalski with respect to any details on that easement. Thanks so much.
Brian, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to compliment Mr. Bell on his presentation. I thought he did a really good job. And I think he raised some valid points as a neighboring property owner. The zoning that's being requested, as mentioned by Ivan, will have a holding symbol on it, and there will be a formal. When I was approached by Joe to have the zoning changed on this, I recommended to him that the only way this could happen is if we put it in a holding zone, because otherwise he'd have to have all the supporting studies up front, and the site plan approval process is fairly new to Whitewater, and it's a fairly rigorous process. And when we crafted the zoning application and the bylaw, we were instructed to basically look at every possible use that the property could be used for. It doesn't necessarily mean that all those uses will be operating at the same time at any one time on that property. For all intents and purposes, this property will be operated in conjunction with the adjacent wilderness tourist property as one business. And the key here is that our request is that the access be granted over the wilderness tourist property, the former River Run property, to get access to Grant Settlement Road. And I support what Ivan was saying about access, and that's the most logical access to this property. Really, when it comes down to the details of how the site gets developed, then consideration has to be given to a lot of environmental considerations, including the water course that runs through the property, the shoreline, buffering, all those sorts of things. So it'll probably be mostly business as usual down there in terms of how the property's operated. And then as far as the parkland is concerned, I guess it's a park that's not operated as a park that's generally open to the public. And really, I think if people are looking at using that park, they might want to talk to the Algonquins of Ontario first before in conjunction with the province, because I think that property is one of the properties they're looking at as well. So that's all I really have to say about that. Unless Joe, I'm sure Joe may want to say something too.
Yes, just so when I brought the property, there was no access to that property. It was landlocked, and at the time, I did not own the adjoining property, and I needed access to it, and so so there is a general easement across the property, but there is and you should probably have it registered on title, exactly if I would ever put a road, where the road would go, and I did it in such a way that it would never, I'm very sensitive about farmland, and if there ever was an access road put in, it would not affect the farm.
Comment that that's nice to hear. The only problem with that particular statement is it is laid out. I know exactly how they stipulated the easement as far as whenever the property was purchased. It was shown, it was well documented. I know where they had it laid out. As far as I believe it was mostly a verbal agreement, or it wasn't a verbal agreement, it was written down, but the general area that they would try to put that easement through the property was stipulated. Since the purchase of that property, the land use has changed where the gentleman that Joe bought the property off of, he pastured cattle on that land. A road through with a fence probably wouldn't have impacted that use quite as much as putting a 60-foot road through. We have that back portion that butts up to Wilderness Tours is about 27 acres, and there's really no good way to get over to that property without going through a substantial portion of that land. Now, what Ivan said, and if that's council's position or the planning's position, as far as he wouldn't see there to be any reason why you would have a secondary access whenever you have permanent access through the other Wilderness Tours property. That puts a little bit of resolve on that issue, but still a concern nonetheless, considering that it is permanently on the deed of the property unless relinquished by the person who owns the easement, right? So.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
If I may comment, there's no reason why I wouldn't be a good neighbor. Like, I neighbor a lot of people, and for the last 50 years, and almost all those relationships are very good, and I don't see why this would be any different.
Okay, so now that the question has come up about what was mentioned as two access routes, will this property in yellow be swallowed up by the current property? Or is it going to be retained as two separate properties?
Oh, the intention is to have it as two separate properties.
So two entrances or one?
Pardon me?
Two entrances to the river or one? Will you be using the same entrance? Will you putting in a separate entrance to the river on that property?
Yes, you can access the river from both properties.
Okay. Councillor Nicholson?
I've just lost my question. Sorry, Mayor. I just need a second. Oh, sorry. One question for the landowner. Mark, right?
Yep.
Mark, I'm unclear in terms of the properties that you own. I don't know if that
Okay. So,
but there's a river course that runs there. Are you farm on both sides of that river course?
no. So if you look directly, so the property that's highlighted right now, that's the property in question. That's north on a map. South of that property, so directly across that double line where the mouse is right now, that property is a 106-acre parcel that I own with 3 other landowners. If you go east of that property, me and my wife Candace own the 67 acres adjacent to that. So it was
remaining on this side of the road allowance.
That's right. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. And on the north side of that river course, the one that abuts the entranceway into Wilderness Tours, is that part of your holding, Joe, or is that another landowner? Where the cornfield is right now alongside your road?
Oh, that's another landowner. I believe that's the Nagel Farms.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And the biggest concern that we really haven't been able to address so far, or hasn't been discussed between the different parties, is, from my understanding, is really that easement over your property that's granted to...
I would say that's probably I can speak for the other 3 property owners as well. That's probably our number one concern for sure. You know, I'm 31 years old, just starting to get into the into a little bit of farming. I've kind of secured this 50 acres as a property for myself to continue to kind of build my business. And that, obviously building a road right through the middle of that is a concern moving forward. So, yeah, I would say that's definitely the biggest concern, along with the other things I addressed, but those are more general in nature than specific to my property, for sure.
And that would be a concern regardless of how it's zoned?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Ivan, you want to chime in here? Oh, sorry, Charlene. Go ahead, Charlene. Ivan Holm.
Is the easement over your property, or is the easement over Joe's property? Kind of, it's over
So the
your
easement is, yeah, so
And Joe accesses that easement to access the highlighted.
right. So,
area.
yeah, just to maybe clarify, so Wilson Ray was the previous landowner. Whenever he owned these properties, so that 33 acres, he also owned all the property that we owned. Wilson granted Joe the easement across the property that we now own, which was actually, it was one property that got severed into 3. We now own 2 of those 3 parcels.
Right.
That that easement is actually on the deed for that entire property. Like Joe said, it's a general easement for that entire property, but specifically it affects this 106 acres because obviously that's the one that now neighbors that, since the severance, that is the only one that would border that property.
Right.
Yeah, and so I guess just to address, like you said, it would be a concern regardless. It was a concern whenever we purchased the property, but just looking at it now, whenever you look at, okay, well, this property is now changing from waterfront to tourism commercial, depending on the particular use, or the scope of development. What does that mean for potential future access? And it has been addressed. Like, I haven't addressed it. I understand. I just wanted to maybe put.
Right. But failing that easement,
Yep.
there is also the unopened road allowance that could be accessed to access Wilderness Tours property.
And that's what, I think that's what Ivan was saying earlier whenever he made his comments. That right of way does come through Joe's property at Wilderness Tours now. So
Right.
that's, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ivan?
Yeah, maybe just essentially the private easement over Mark's land, and which is in favor of Mr. Kowalski and Joel and Catherine. That easement is a private matter. Like, other than the fact that it might service future development, that's kind of when the township gets involved, because we're looking at how are we going to access commercial development through site plan approval. I think the key thing here is if these lands are going to be used as a continuation of River Run and Wilderness Tours, then the access should be through the existing driveway and the existing access points to Grant Settlement Road. With that being said, though, this is a landlocked property, and Mr. Kowalski benefits from an easement. So it is a bit complex, but I would say that these, how you're going to access these lands is going to be discussed at greater lengths when the land is proposed for development. And maybe what we could do then is circle in Mark and the group that own those lands and advise them that, what decision is made from Mr. Kowalski, and kind of they could form part of the conversation when we go through site plan approval at that stage. But I think staff would be steering towards not developing a new access point and using what is existing, which already provides access to these lands through an existing driveway that's built and that, funnels all the way up to Grant Settlement Road. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Hopefully we answered all your questions. If not, send us a note and we'll try and get an answer. Thank you, Joe. Yes, we just did a reconsideration
So you got to vote to.
To-
For a second, and vote to,
accept.
yes.
Okay. Okay. Voting on to accept what we just discussed. Oh, Councillor McLaughlin, go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe I'd like to go back to Ivan to make sure I have it in my mind that if we approve this, that the easement or the approach to the land when it comes to site approval would come back again. Is that so? Really, right now, because I think the biggest concern of Mark's is the easement, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't want it, I want to make sure that it's going to come back again to council if we approve this motion that's on the floor.
So the answer to that is yes. What's being considered tonight is the use and not how the land will be developed. When the applicant files for site plan control approval, we would come back to council with a full detailed plan on how the land will be developed and how it will be accessed. So we will be coming back to council at a later date once these lands are developed. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much for clarifying it for me, Ivan.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now, that concludes number 2, so we'll move on to number 3. The next zoning amendment is for a property located at part of Lot 27, Westmeath Concession B, E.M.L, Cemetery Road. Will staff please give an overview of the application?
Yeah, certainly. So the present application is a condition of consent of severance for what was a lot addition to the lands held by Earth's Edge, which is essentially Ready Recycling that fronts on Cemetery Road. So Ready Recycling or Earth's Edge purchased land from the township in our industrial park. They developed the land with a recycling station, and they've since purchased land from one of the adjacent owners for a lot addition to expand their enterprise or their business or their facility. So the property in question with this zoning is 5.7 acres in size. Council may recall that a similar zoning was done last year to permit a transfer station on the existing Ready Recycling lands, the existing facility lands. The purpose of this is to extend that previously approved zoning to the lands that are part of the lot addition. So ultimately, the lands in question will be within a general industrial exception 4 zone. That'll permit the additional use of a transfer station, and a transfer station is defined in the report there. So it's to receive recyclable stewardship, waste, and other materials for processing. And then it includes machinery and equipment in connection with that. So it's a consistency thing for the lot addition lands to be consistently zoned with the lands they're going to be added to. So staff are supportive, and we're looking for council's consideration. Thanks.
Move on to the motion. The motion is the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the portion of the lands described as part of Lot 27, Westmeath Concession B, E.M.L, Cemetery Road, from rural RU zone to the site-specific general industrial exception 4, GME4 zone. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor McLaughlin. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we'll move on to number 4. Just a minute. I just read the wrong one.
We're on 1190 Haley Road now.
Yeah, no, I read that. I read the wrong one.
I got the right resolution.
Because this is Cemetery Road, and this is Okay, now we're going to Cemetery Road.
We just did cemetery, we're gonna do Haley.
We just voted on
All
Cemetery
right, we'll
Road.
go to Haley Road. The next zoning amendment is for property located at 1190 Haley Road. Will staff please give an overview of the application?
Yeah, thanks so much. So at 1190 Haley Road, it's a small property, 0.09 acres in size. It essentially has a storage structure, a garage on the property. This garage used to form part of the adjacent commercial business, which is an insulation business. So that, as I understand it, they used to store equipment and the like in that storage structure. So that property, for some reason, is currently in a residential 2 zone. That land has since been sold to Jamal, and he's seeking to sort of correct the zoning to a real general commercial zone, as well as provide for an exception to allow for the additional use of a warehouse. So what he's currently doing is he's he uses the facility as a warehouse where he accesses it maybe on a one-time week basis, grabs material, and then distributes it to businesses within Renfrew County and the like. So essentially, the site is maybe visited twice a week, one for bringing of packages and one for in and one for out. So in some sense, the property benefits from a non-conforming status. It was already used for commercial storage purposes. And really the intent here is for commercial storage purposes, but more in a warehousing fashion. So the development, again, is not intended to accommodate the public. Public are not going there. There's no office space there. It's just for warehousing. So staff are supportive of this, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I understand no one has registered to speak. The application was circulated and several agencies had responded with no comments or concerns. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to this zoning category of the property known municipally as 1190 Haley Road from residential 2 R2 zone to general commercial exception 6. GCE 6. Motion and seconder, please. Reeve-Regier and Councillor Mackay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Just a quick question. At what point are you going to ask for questions from council during this monologue?
Oh.
Because, and as well, there is no, I know you're saying that there has nobody been registered, but as we saw previously, there was an issue when Mr. Bell was here. So I think the monologue needs to change just moving forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the floor?
It's already been voted on.
No. Okay, then we'll move on to number 5. The next zoning amendment is for property located at part of Lot 27, Ross Concession 4, Garden Lake Trail. Will staff please give an overview?
Thanks so much. So this, again, is a condition of severances, numerous severances. It's for 7 severances altogether. What's happened here is numerous landowners have applied for lot additions to the back of their waterfront properties to increase their lot sizes. And each of them, in their cases, they are increasing from their rear property line or front property line, we'd actually call it, all the way back to Garden Lake Trail, which is a private road. So I'm not sure if you have a map in front of you, but ultimately there's numerous lots in question here. But they're all, because it's all one large property today, we could apply for one zoning and rezone all of these portions of land. So essentially the waterfront lots where the cottages and the houses are within a limited service residential zone. Limited service means it's on a private road. Residential means it allows residential uses. All of the lands in question here are in a rural zone today. So the point here is to have continuous zoning on the lot addition and the existing waterfront lots. So the zoning category will change from rural to limited service residential. So staff are supportive of this. It was a condition of approval for the severances, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that council may have. Thanks so much.
I understand no one is registered to speak. The application was circulated and several agencies had responded with no comments or concerns. Any comments from the floor? Councillor McLaughlin?
Ivan, these are properties that we've had here before. Isn't that correct? They've come in front of council, some of them anyway. I mean, I know.
I'm uncertain. Since I was the planner, since I've been with the township, I haven't had this come forward to council. I know in my conversation with the owner, which is Matthew Stabinski, he had thought that maybe it did. I did do some searching and I didn't find a previous bylaw. I think perhaps you might maybe referring to land sale that we had closer to the municipal beach, or what is maybe called the municipal beach or the boat launch. But no, these particular lands, I don't think, at least in the last 3 or 4 years, have come forward to council.
Maybe what I'm thinking is the lots adjacent to these lots had the addition to them. Would that be what I'm thinking about?
Perhaps on the other side of the in the other bay, maybe there might have been some reports that came to council for that, for lot creations, perhaps. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Nicholson, sorry.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a question probably directed at Ivan. Why aren't all of the lots being extended? Why is it only just a portion? It looks like 3 in the middle aren't extending. Is that correct?
Yeah, so essentially this is being led by a family that owns 3 or 4 lots down there. So the first series of severances sort of occurred in the spring of 2021. So yeah, I think my goal here is that I don't want people owning land behind the neighbors. So everybody's just getting straight lines that are parallel with their property lines to Garden Lake Trail. If the people in the gap there wish to purchase land in the future, maybe they can, but in some cases the topography, provides no benefit to them. So it might just stay like this forever and a day, and I'm comfortable with that. So yeah, it's just not everybody signed up to this and wants to move forward with it.
Is that piece of property landlocked then?
Well, no, it remains with Mr. Stabinski's lands, which are on both sides of Garden Lake Trail. It's like a 30 or 50 acre property.
Okay, sorry, I just missed that, the trail portion. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to item 5, announcements. Reeve Gear.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one. Lacey Rose, our county forester, is hosting a forestry tour at the Beechburg Tract tomorrow night, beginning at 4 o'clock, from 4 to 5:30, and everyone is welcome to attend. She'll be given a tour, and as we're all aware, that is being harvested this year. And she's going to do an outline and give an update and show all the different species and different things that are. So it'll be quite interesting for anyone who'd like to attend. Thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
I just want to mention the Beechwood Fair. We had a very successful fair. 7,000 people came, and I want to thank the council for working in our snack bar. And I'd also like to give a special thanks to Ruben Snyder, who saved us with water from the rink to the cattle barn, and that was a lifesaver for us because we had 150 head to facilitate. Other than that, we had a great time, and see you again next year. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple. Related to our seniors home support pilot, we've been able to secure a replacement employee. Amanda resigned and has taken on a job in Ottawa, and Holly, and I've lost her name, Holly Brown has been hired in her replacement in that position. Our focus right now, based on the grants that we were able to obtain, is to run the Senior Centers Without Walls program we're actually providing telephone-based programming county-wide in conjunction with many of the different senior centers and agencies across Renfrew County. So it's an excellent opportunity to support our most vulnerable seniors, and Holly is leading that charge right now. We've also had another very successful curbside dinner. Now that's a partnership we have between Eganville Seniors, the Civitan Club, and as much support as we can provide from the Township side. We had over 70 participants at the last dinner at the end of July, so it's been very well received by the community. And we're hoping to expand that support towards the river and cover more of Foresters Falls and Beechburg in September. So wait for news on that one. And the third and final point is just Eganville Seniors has submitted for an application to the federal government for grant support to run some very specific seniors programming. They've asked us if we would like to participate from a seniors pilot perspective. We have graciously accepted their offer of potential funding and support. So again, some great news, and the real point of this is we're having a great partnership with some of the other agencies that are bordering Whitewater region. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to item 6, reports. Business Retention and Expansion Report. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the final Business Retention and Expansion Report and direct staff to consider the findings as part of the 2023 budget and work plans. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Jackson. And this goes to Scott.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. So this does represent the end of the business retention and expansion formal process. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights. Now this becomes a bit of a living document. There was action plans that have been recommended as part of this report, and these action plans will be going forward at the Township as part of potential action plans for future budget consideration, grant funding proposals, and the like. So the document does have a kind of general outline. As you know from my further reports, this was a survey-based program that we had 79 businesses complete the survey and provide their input. And then in June, we had a action plan meeting with some members of council, as well as business organization and business members from Whitewater region, where we came up with action plans and action items in order to facilitate growth and development of businesses here in Whitewater region. Some of these action plan items are short-term goals and can be done in-house. Other ones are longer-term objectives that require outside funding and assistance. They were broken down into 4 main categories. Action plans for infrastructure included the continued expansion of cell phone and internet access, improvement of road services with an emphasis on trucking routes and the availability of getting heavy trucks to industries. The creation or expansion of a new business park of some kind, and then the continued encouragement of rental spaces, creation and availability. For under marketing promotion, the second action plan was under marketing promotion. There was an action plan recommendation to create a Whitewater Region Ambassadorship program in partnership with the Whitewater Historical Society, a document that could be included in new staff orientation training, volunteer orientation training for anyone from outside of Whitewater, just to give them a knowledge of what is Whitewater and the history behind it. So if visitors or tourists do come to visit our stores, our shops, they have some knowledge of the area and can be proud of it and explain that kind of pride to visitors to this area. The creation of new local tourism experiences, additional maps, brochures, small travel guides, day itinerary plans that can be done in-house to focus on Whitewater's natural outdoor assets. More significant promotion of the Rural Rewards program to encourage more businesses to sign up. a new wayfinding signage program to help direct visitors off of the highway and get them to stop in Whitewater region. And then creating marketing strategies specifically focused on adventure tourism, lifestyle tourists, and vacation tourists. Action plans for business support, which is the third category, which includes the creation of a business advisory committee that is open to all of Whitewater businesses on a rotating members basis that would be in partnership with council. Updates to the business page of the Whitewater Region website. These business updates include info for new businesses, opportunities to purchase businesses, rental space, and funding opportunities. Host business networking sessions, partnership with the local farmers market to support a market for Whitewater businesses to attend the farmers market. Promotion of business information sessions, marketing sessions, and skill trades. We have many partnership organizations. The Renfrew County, Renfrew and Lanark Labor Relations Board, Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation, and Enterprise Renfrew County that all offer business training and succession planning and other basic business meetings. And we want to partner with them to advertise to all businesses that those services are available. And then the general continued attraction of new businesses to Whitewater region. Finally, the fourth point was workforce and labor. Action plans that were presented were to create a partnership with local high schools and Algonquin colleges to create more co-op placements in Whitewater region. The creation and promotion of local ride-sharing options. The promotion of a centralized job hub for businesses looking to hire and people looking to find jobs. And then to assist in the planning of a local job fair in partnership with these organizations that I had mentioned previously. The focus on creation of affordable housing options and the creation of an immigration strategy to promote Whitewater region as a possible destination for new workers. This document is quite extensive and there is quite a lot of data in it. So I am happy to answer any questions from council. My final note is going forward, there is no current financial implications from this report, but in order to implement these action plans, some financial consideration will have to be considered or taken going forward. Some can be completed in-house, but some of the larger ones will need external financial support or direction from budgeted items. Is there any questions from council at this time?
Questions? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Scott. It was well done. I have no questions, but I just wanted to officially wish you well in your position at the County of Renfrew, and we will certainly miss you. This paper was well done, and it gives us a lot to think about moving forward. Thank you again.
Anyone else? Councillor Nicholson.
Yes, thanks, Scott. And now we have a Whitewater spy up at county. So don't forget your roots, right? No? Okay. I shouldn't have said that out loud. Anyway, great report. I got 3 questions and more just, you've done this for how many months now? Like 10?
Yeah, this would be the 10th. August is the 10th month of my contract, yeah.
So I'm hoping for some of your thoughts. 3 things that stood out for me. They're all in the business support recommendation section.
Of course.
So the first one is just about the Business Advisory Committee. And this has been an idea that's been floated around, and I think it's happened before in the past. Some of the councillors that have seen this before. Is this something that the businesses really, like the owners, the people that participated in the survey, they were really interested in?
So some business owners, this was a high priority for them. Now, there is some business owners in Whitewater region that get together on a semi-regular basis, and other business owners feel like it is a bit of a private club as it's not open to any business owner. It's just kind of a selected invitation. So some businesses recommended a formal business advisory committee where business on a rotating business could become a member, have a chance to meet with council or have a council representative sit on this advisory committee, get a chance to talk to the planner, economic development, and potentially council on a formal, either monthly or quarterly basis to have a more direct connection.
Excellent. Okay, that's good feedback. The second one is, sorry, Mary, you don't mind if I keep going? No? Okay, good. We talked about here, continue to attract new businesses to Whitewater region. When you said focusing on new essential community businesses, you listed 4 examples. Are those examples, or are those the priority that you would establish or recommend for us to consider?
So those 4 examples were examples listed by businesses in the survey data. Specifically in certain communities, specifically Beechwood, there is a request by businesses for a gas station. Now, this is not a necessarily new information to a lot of Beechwood residents and businesses, but it is now something that is kind of formally part of this report. Other requests were for accommodations, especially from our tourism sector. If we are wanting to promote, we have Algonquin Trail, we have Westmeath Provincial Park, we have the Whitewater Park, as Mr. Kowalski was talking about earlier this evening. We have these natural assets in Whitewater region, but people need someplace to stay. We don't, at this time, we have many campgrounds, but they're not all publicly, like I couldn't rent a spot for an evening and put up a tent even, which leaves currently, and with the renovations that have happened in the Cobden, at the Cobden Shell, we've also have lost those 8 motel rooms as well for accommodations in Whitewater. So accommodations was another one that was listed for people visiting. If you don't have family here, the next closest hotel is either Renfrew or Pembroke. And if you're going to stay there, why would you travel back here to visit something? So to get people to stay, we need someplace for them to eat and to be able to spend the night.
Good. What, did Airbnbs come up, or any of those kinds of?
Airbnbs did not come up in the formal document as a request, but general accommodations, even there was one mention of bed and breakfasts, which is a similar kind of 1-bedroom or 1-room accommodation as an Airbnb, but the Airbnb itself did not come up directly in the surveys.
Awesome, great feedback. Okay, last one. The whole concept of BRE, in terms of trying to implement these recommendations, it's going to be expensive to really make a good effort at most of them. And your experience when you go to county now, is there more of an opportunity for us to approach this from a leg approach, or from, maybe that's to Ivan there, but is it more regional or partnering with county to try to accomplish some of these things on this list?
So I'll speak, and Ivan of course can speak if you'd like to. Part of this is the creation of partnerships. At the end of my report, there is actually graphs that break down organizations that have already agreed to partner with us with some of these opportunities, some of these tasks. It's the last chart. It should be the last 5 pages of the report, if you have the report ahead of us, in front of you. But you see on the right-hand side the labor relations, some of the different organizations that have already agreed with partnership. Part of this is partnership. We either facilitate the work or apply for grant funding or work with these organizations that are already in place to get some of these goals. There were some smaller ones as well. The action plans are broken down into kind of large objectives and small objectives. A lot of the small objectives can be done in-house. They just need a little bit of time and dedication and consideration as part of the formal process. I will point out, it was mentioned that I am leaving this role, but I have already facilitated some of this. With council approval of this document, tomorrow there will be updates to the website. All the business information that was listed under business support will be ready to go live on the website as of tomorrow with council approval tonight. And then some of the other projects that will actually be mentioned later this evening will be passed to our community development coordinator, Debbie, and she'll be handling the project going forward. And I have broken it down with her in a document as to what things can be done short-term, long-term, and when to post updates as necessary for this document.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Reed Brigier.
Just a final comment. I just wanted to echo Councillor Jackson's remarks. Scott, I just want to wish you all the best at the county. I know you're going to do extremely well. It's been a pleasure having you. You've always got a smile on your face coming through that door, and it's always been great to see you coming. So all the best to you, and I know you're going to do very well and exceed at whatever you do. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you very much, Reeve.
Thank you. Ivan, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I would just echo what the members of council are saying. Yeah, so Scott's last day is this Friday. Certainly, he's accomplished a lot here. He's created a lot of engagement with our business community. So, you know, the retention and the expansion piece to Councillor Nicholson's question is, you know, we've created these connections not only with the businesses but other organizations that could support them. In some cases, we are the organization that could support them, but also financial means and different organizations for labor resources. So it's just a matter of creating those connections and knowing that we're open to assist our businesses if they want to pursue these other opportunities. So they could contact us in the first place, and then we could try to guide them or direct them to where they need to go. But again, yeah, thanks so much, Scott, for your efforts on this, and wish you the best in your next leg of your career. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, my turn. Just seems like yesterday you were hired, and now it seems like tomorrow you're leaving. So all the best to you in your new endeavors, and don't forget Whitewater loves you. Come back anytime. Thank you for your report. It was great.
Gladly. Thank you, Matt.
Seeing nothing else, we'll move on. Oh, call for a vote. All in favor of receiving report? Carried. Thank you. Now we're moving on to 6.2, Wayfinding Signage Grant Funding and Application. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for approval of the Ontario Highlands Grant Funding for the implementation of a wayfinding signage program. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. Scott or Ivan, who goes to this next?
I believe this comes to me, Mayor.
Scott, go ahead.
So, in one other thing to add is that part of the business retention, there was a request for a wayfinding signage program. As part of that request, we actually, I went ahead and, under the direction of the CAO, and applied for a grant funding to help finance this potential signage operation. This report to council is to approve of this funding application and its use. So a wayfinding signage program, and there is examples on the screen now, is something that is used mostly in the tourism sector to help residents and visitors to I guess the word I'm looking for is realize what the different options are when they come to a new community. This wayfinding signage program in Whitewater Region, there'd be multiple signs placed at the entrances of each town and community, and they would point arrows towards things like public washrooms, arenas, public parks, beaches, downtown retail sectors. In the community of Cobden, it would point towards Municipal Hall off of the highway, and events such as that. So this is primary use. This grant funding that was applied for $30,000, and it was applied for as part of the tourism industry recovery fund that was paid for by the federal government and kind of provided by the local tourism establishment, the Ontario Highlands Tourist Association. So we were successful in receiving the funding for $30,000. And this was in support of the BR&E, as well as the growth readiness study that was done in 2001, the community first impressions that was done in 2019, and the public parks report that will be received later this evening. This funding would go towards the creation of these wayfinding signs across the township in our small communities and on major tourism routes, as well as 25% of the funding will be allocated towards any additional signage related to tourism that is needed, and marketing and promotional material, as 25% of the funds can be allocated towards marketing and promotional material for the region. Is there any questions by council at this time?
Okay, any questions? Councillor Jackson.
I think this is a great idea, and it's very fortunate that the township was successful in this grant application, because as we found out from one of the studies, and I forget what exactly it was called, the one where they, Armprior and us, first impressions,
That
thank
was
you.
the first impression study, yes.
Yes, that really told a tale. And I always say, when you know where you're going, you already know where you're going, and you don't need signs to get there. But somebody new coming in, and I understand for sure that Armprior doesn't come, mostly Armprior people don't come this way very often. They tend to go towards Ottawa a lot, having worked in Armprior prior, that it's important for outsiders to tell us what they see. And this was a high priority. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know who to ask. So this is going to help us a lot. And I like the signage that as an example. Obviously, we don't have some of those things, but that it's going to be clear, concise, and the direction will be nice. It'll be easy to read. While I do like the signage that's outside Cobden and at different places, but those little squares that show what's in Cobden are very hard to see as you're going from 90 to 70 going down the road. So while it does, if you, like I said, if you know where you're going, then you know where you're going. But if you don't, you're really lost. And to find Astrolabe Arena, the Beechburg Arena, the Westmeath Arena, all of that will certainly help, as well as where our retail sections are in those areas. It's going to be a big boost, I think, for anybody that's especially coming through on Highway 17 and off the county roads to those other areas. So thank you, Scott, for doing this application. And I look forward to seeing the signage in the future.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? Call for a vote. All in favor of receiving? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Oh, sorry, Ivan, I didn't ask you if you had a comment. You're good?
No, I would just say, we'll ultimately implement this project. It was applied for and approved while I was away on leave, but certainly we'll find the resources, being staff resources, to put out a request for quotation and move forward with it. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Scott. That's it for this evening for you? You're done?
Yeah, that's it for me. That was my other project that I've been working on, was this, as the kind of financial opportunity presented itself with the grant funding, and from the community first impressions and the BR&E, the request for even a signage that points towards public parking spaces and public washrooms. COVID pandemic really taught a lot of people that a little sign that has a washroom symbol might be helpful as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it was a lot of work in 10 months, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, council members, do we want a break? Yes, okay. 5 minutes, please. Thank you, and we're back. We are on item 6.3, renewal and optimization of Beechburg Water Treatment Plant. And recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enter into the transfer payment agreement for the Beechburg Water Treatment Plant Renewal and Optimization Project with a total estimate cost of $2,062,593.60, including federal, provincial, and municipal portions. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Jackson. This goes to Steve, please.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Scott's reports, this is a good news story, but this one has financial implications. So we applied for funding in September 2021 through Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Greenstream, Intake 2, and we're successful. We received the Investing in Canada, the transfer payment agreement in June, which verifies our success. So we chose, senior staff here and at Aqua chose some dated items at the Beechburg Water Treatment Plant we felt could use some upgrades. And the estimated cost of those upgrades, more or less based on Aqua's 2018 20-year capital plan, is where we grabbed most of our numbers. And we came up with a project over $2 million. There's the federal portion is 40%, province is 33.33, and Whitewater region's portion is 26.67. So recommendation of the report is to enter into the transfer payment agreement. There are some funding strategies laid out in the report, and I would like to open it up to any questions if there is any.
Councillor Jackson, please.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate staff on this successful application. I know what it takes to put these applications together, and it's not easy, and I know it takes more than one to put it all together. And this is a very good news story, and I certainly like the project that was selected. I think, as we know, Beechburg needs some help with regards to their capital plan at the Beechburg water treatment, and this is certainly going to help in the long run and is going to be well utilized with Whitewater region. It's nice to see that we only have to contribute 26.67% at this time, and of course, as we know, if the costs go up, then it is also borne by the water users at that time. So hopefully the cost estimate is above what we anticipate, and that the actual cost comes in lower so that the implication to the ratepayers isn't as much. But I think this is a very good news story, and this will be well used over the next few years for sure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Steve, does this mean we don't need a water tower?
I would suggest as Beechburg continues to develop, eventually we are going to have to take a serious look at a elevated water storage tank. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not...
This is just internal. Most of this is pumping, automation, electrical, generator. This is not going to increase pressure per se. And as Beechburg continues to sprawl outwards, we will eventually have to look at a water tower. I think it's inevitable.
So this is not the glamour shot. The water tower would be the glamour.
Well, this is pretty sweet.
All right, thank you. Good work.
Councillor Nicholson.
Awesome. Great news to see this kind of investment in Beechburg in this specific situation. Just wanted to see the work that is being done. Does it increase the capacity for us to support new development at all? or is it all just maintaining the current capacity of the pumping?
Correct. It's maintaining it at current. It's an upgrade of several compliance in terms of SCADA and process components. We're looking at pumps, wells. Now, the wells, you could look at that as somewhat, perhaps increasing capacity, but we still have the same storage. And eventually someday, as Councillor Mackay was speaking of the tower, that's where the storage is, and that will help with pressure as well. So this is more internal in the plant.
I was just curious if we could apply DCs to it, if there was any capacity increase. But
I would just say that we'll look at that as part of the budget when we go to actually figure out how we're going to finance it. But I would say that the DC balance would be very, very minimal at this point in time. I think we still need a little bit of time for that to develop itself.
good. The next question is just, you had mentioned just about the water tower, and I'm curious, and not now, but what that trigger would be. Is there a certain number of additional households? When we hit this number, we're going to need a tower, or is it based on existing equipment? Don't have to answer it now, Steve, but that would be something floating around in my head when it comes to long-term planning.
Yeah.
Okay, and if in your financial options in the report, it talks about using the 2022 contributions. Would that zero them out in that reserve?
So the different options there, one of the options is it would basically zero the reserve out and then start at nothing moving forward. And then there's to keep some balance in there, like increasing rates to still have some balance in the reserve. And then there's the debenture option. So those are like just at this point in time, with the numbers we have, like we don't really know what the ending balance of this year is going to be until we get closer to year end. So it's just forecasting my best estimate at this point in time.
And we confirm that financing option at a subsequent council meeting?
The financing option for like how we're going to fund this project. Yeah, I think that we're going to do that during the budget process. Like we're probably going to come and say we have to fund this much. We've the capital requirement here. Here's our best our best options. I think right now we're just saying we will find those funds.
It's possible, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we're signing the agreement to the province saying we are committed to. So council tonight is committing to funding this project, their portion, some way or another. I have outlined a few different options that, because we don't anticipate that we would need how we're going to do it right now. We just need to know we have three options on the table, or three types of options, and that council is committed to one of those, and we'll iron that out throughout the budget process for 2023.
Good. I like that approach. We go into the decision with our eyes wide open. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, two questions. One, if we deplete the reserves, what does that do for emergency water main breaks? Do we have another reserve somewhere else?
Well, if it depletes the reserve, I mean we'll have no money in reserve. And then emergency water main breaks, if we don't have the fund, I would think that we're going to have enough in our operating budget to offset, unless we had a bunch of different breaks. But worst case scenario, there could be we'll call it an internal. If it like worst case scenario, there could be an internal loan from general fund to the water fund in the event that we needed to do that. Just the water fund would have to pay back the general fund. So I think we don't want to deplete the reserve, or if we do, we want to have an option or strategy to continue to build that back up. So, but it's a great question.
Okay, question number two. Are we looking at projection then for 2023 or 2024 for this work?
I can speak to that. Yes, so for the next steps would be prepare a RFP for the project, then obtain a engineering firm to prepare drawings, and then go for tender next year.
Work completion 23 or 24?
I believe it's in 2024.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Projects have to be done by 2026.
Well, that's soon enough. That'll come quick. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.4, pedestrian crossing request. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region request that the County of Renfrew consider the installation of a pedestrian crossing on County Road 7, which is Forsters Falls Road, at Howard Street. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Mackay. This goes to Lane, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, this report is just a formality with the county. As per the county policy, PW 14, any pedestrian crossing has to get the lower tier council resolution. This report just asks, this is for that reason. Even if it's a county project with municipality, they still want a council resolution for the to install a PXO in the Forster Falls. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Jackson.
Was there a big call for this pedestrian crossing at Howard Street?
Yes, so part of the Forster Falls project, it was awarded last council meeting, I believe. There was two options. One was on one side, which for the multi-use pathway. What was approved was the multi-use pathway alternating at Howard Street, which would require a PXO there to cross over the road.
And whose cost will it be? Will it be the counties or will it be the townships?
Be the townships.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.5, road assumption. Broom Road, recommendation of the council, pass a bylaw to accept, assume, dedicate as public highway and name the lands described as Part 2 of Plan 49R-20118. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson. This goes to Ivan, please.
Thanks so much, and with the support of our Manager of Public Works, Lane, if he needs to chime in here. But essentially, Mrs. Maloney owns land that is on the two sides of what is today's Broom Road. Broom Road is deemed a forced road. It was never surveyed or not part of an unopened road allowance or road allowance. So ultimately this forced road exists. What the owner's done is she wants to divide the two pieces of parcel that are on each side of the road. And through advice from her lawyer and the surveyor is that if she surveys the road and transfers it to us, it would ultimately create two separate conveyable parcels. She's avoiding the severance process, if you will, which is fine. I think we're agreeable to the remaining to the end lots. The purpose here is that we would assume and accept the section of road that's been surveyed. So that section of road's been surveyed by Adam Kasperzak. It has a 66-foot right-of-way width measured from the center line of the existing road. So again, not changing the condition of the road, just surveyed and going to be transferred to us, and we're going to dedicate it as public highway and receive it. So no cost to us here. Surveying was done by the owner. The lawyer is going to register the bylaw if it gets approved by council. So no cost here, just formalizing this section of the road. Thanks so much.
Any questions? I do. This is a current road, it was just surveyed, or is this a new path through the bush?
This is an existing municipal road, but it's not, it has never been dedicated to the township. It's kind of this forced road. I don't know all the details on that, but it's a forced road. It wasn't a road that was built on an unopened road allowance. It was just forced through there, if you will, but it is a municipal road maintained by the township. Thanks.
So is it up to our standard then for us to accept? We do it now, it just wasn't on title. Okay, Councillor McLaughlin?
Okay, Ivan, I'm going to ask this question because I'm sure, because Mr. Kowalski owned some of the land and the Brooms owned another piece of that land. And I thought that was supposed to be surveyed and deeded back to the township at some point. And did that never happen?
That did happen down the road. So what's being surveyed is only the portions that front on the person who owns the land. So this section is from Grant Settlement Road in for the section that is owned by Mrs. Maloney. There's a separate section down the road that was also surveyed and transferred to the township. So this is happening sort of piecemeal, but that's just how it happens. And again, no cost to us. Yeah, essentially that. Thanks.
Yeah. And so will this complete the survey and the deeding of the road, or is there still some more pieces and parts?
I think there might still be some pieces and parts, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you, but I was sure that we had looked at this before. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we'll move on to 6.6, Road Assumption, Mansell Hill Road. Recommendation that the council pass a bylaw to accept, assume, and dedicate as public highway and name the lands described as Part 2 of Plan 49R-20121. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. Back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this is another transfer of a small strip of land of the township. Again, here to accept, assume, and dedicate as public highway. This is a condition of severance. The owners severed off what is their existing dwelling and a sizable piece of property. As a condition of approval, we've been requiring the survey confirm the width of the right-of-way, and in which cases where it's not 20 meters wide, they transfer a portion of land to us. In this case, it found that there was about a 1 meter road widening required. We might see this as pretty minor in nature, but in this particular case, the entrance here is on a hill of sorts. So this 1 meter, while it is small, might serve to benefit us in the future if ever we sort of realign slightly the road. So again, just a small strip of land, condition of severance, and staff are supportive of this. Thanks so much.
Any questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.7, lifting of 1 foot reserve, Wren Subdivision. Recommendation 1, that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region pass a bylaw to lift the 1 foot reserve on the lands described as Block 15, Plan 573. And 2, that Council pass a bylaw to accept, assume, and dedicate as public highway the lands described as Block 15, Plan 573. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson, Councillor Mackay. Back to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm not sure if you guys have attachment 1 in front of you, but essentially 1 foot reserves, their intended purpose are to restrict access to future developable lands. In this case, there was a 1 foot reserve at the end of phase 1 Wren subdivision around the cul-de-sac and a small strip of land. So since they've obtained approval for phase 2 through a plan of subdivision and the agreement signed and all that, we in the past, council lifted the 1 foot reserve around the cul-de-sac, but this small strip of land, block 15, was missed. So essentially what the present report is going to do is going to clean that up. So somebody's acquired that property or is purchasing that property, and this was picked up by their lawyer. So this is just going to clean this, essentially lift the 1 foot reserve and then make it part of the Morrison Drive, the part of the road. So just a sort of a technical cleaning exercise here. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.8, University of Guelph Park Study. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the Whitewater Region Park Study Report prepared by Bachelor of Landscape Architectural students from the University of Guelph for information purposes. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Nicholson. And this goes to Nicole, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So back in January of this year, my fellow peer Wayne Flapper and I, who were fourth years in the Bachelor of Landscape Architecture program at the University of Guelph, we had reached out to the current and previous CAO with permission of our academic advisor, Professor Karen Landman, to see if the township would like to be part of an academic case study. So they agreed, and after some discussion, it was decided that us students would conduct a parks study. So what happened is that we did an analysis of different parks in the township, and then we developed a report which was completed in April of 2022 and amended this past July, and examines 12 different sites throughout the township and offers both site-specific and general recommendations for park improvement. So briefly, I'm just going to go over some of the methodology of this study. So the selection of parks was based upon 3 factors. The first one being what the township currently considers to be public parks in accordance with the township's parks inventory document that's available on their website. Number 2, any planned parks and parks in the process of being implemented. And 3, spaces with a publicly accessible outdoor sports amenity that can be viewed from aerial photography. So after kind of determining what would be considered a park, each of them were then evaluated based on SWOT principles. So this is a kind of a business way of analyzing parks. And it just means looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and any threats or constraints for the different sites. Then, based on this, suggestions for potential improvements were made that can aid in mitigating weaknesses and help improve overall user experience at the different sites. So during this process, Wayne and I found that there was several redundancies that kept occurring as we made recommendations for each of the parks. Additionally, we saw some opportunities and areas for improvement, so we decided to also implement a general recommendations section, just kind of highlighting all of these. I won't go through all 6 of the general recommendations, but I will highlight the first one, which was that most of the parks, while they are in fairly good condition, they would benefit from the installation of bike racks just to accommodate cyclists throughout the township and anyone that's visiting. Improved signage, as Scott had previously highlighted, just to highlight park entrances and or provide key information for visitors. And lastly, just looking at the inclusion of a greater variety and flexibility of seating options, as with a lot of the parks, it was either very limited or just wasn't very flexible for the different users that may visit the site. So overall, these recommendations are meant to kind of enhance the lives of the local residents by creating safe, accessible, and walkable spaces that allow for increased social interaction and improved healthy lifestyle habits. One last thing I would like to note is just that there were some limitations with the study. So first of all, because we were doing this as an academic case study, we were limited, unfortunately, just to 1 semester, which was 3.5 months in duration. And since we were both working full-time, we couldn't devote a ton of time to it, as much as we would have wanted perhaps more. Additionally, both of us were living down in Guelph at the time, so we did not have access to these sites and had to rely mostly on aerial photography. So due to these constraints, the final report achieves only a surface level analysis of the selected parks. And as such, it should be viewed more as a general guide to possible park improvements. Further analysis and consultation with the local community should be conducted and paired with relevant knowledge before advancing with any of the recommended actions given in the report. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you to Wayne. I don't know if Wayne's online or not, but anyway, thank you for this report. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you so much for this report. This is something that certainly is needed in Whitewater region and a lot of municipalities, smaller municipalities, that's for sure. Just one comment, and everything is fine, but on your map, 8 and 9 need to be switched out. 8 being the Veteran Memorial and 9 being the Cobden Beach Park. But other than that, everything looks great. And I think moving forward, there's a lot of things that our staff can do, and certainly helps with asset management and so many other aspects of the municipality. You know, it gives us an idea of what is necessary for some of the parks and what ideas of what we need to do moving forward. So thank you for sure. Job well done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole and Wayne, if you're online. I just had one question, Nicole. In one of your recommendations, you talk about Cedar Haven Road.
Yes, so that was if there was by chance an opportunity in the future that the township had acquired any land along there. There may be some potential benefit in developing a park just because of the number of residences along there. It would make it more accessible than having to hop in a car and drive to one of the other locations in the township.
I'm just curious if I can drill down on that thought. What was it just the number of residences in that concentration of that area? Or what made you choose it versus another area with a collection of a similar number?
So Cedar Haven Park Road was selected, yes, based on the residences, but also just looking at the proximity of where the other parks were. So I think also mentioned on there as well was Haley Station. So both of these are kind of isolated in terms of, I guess, amenities that are walkable. So walkable is that, like, once again, you don't have to hop into a vehicle. You could perhaps go into use a bike or walk yourself and go to these spaces, and it helps them be used more and reduces barriers to access for them. Obviously, this may not be, like, there may be other sites that perhaps would benefit from it, but these were kind of just two that really popped out to us as we were going through the different sites, kind of looking at where they were spread throughout the township, and just where resident clusters were located.
Yeah, good. I appreciate that thought process. If there was ever a benchmark, and I don't know, maybe Ivan has these tucked away in his planner memory too, but is there, I'd be curious, and you don't have to answer it now, but just if there was a trigger point where after you hit about 60 houses within a 2-kilometer radius, that kind of justifies that kind of public investment. And if that doesn't exist, no problem, but I'd be curious if it did. Thank you.
I don't know if Ivan would like to jump in on that one. There may be policies related to that, though I am not aware of them at this time.
Okay, thanks. Ivan?
Yeah, I would just say, if my recollection serves me well, I think one of the previous park studies speaks to distance between parks and residential areas. I'd have to look at that again, but I think that it's been outlined before in one of our Whitewater region park studies. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, and I liked the idea about Cedar Haven Park Road, I think closer to Mowat Road, as I know when I moved onto Mowat Road, there was maybe one family that had children, and now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7 or 8 families in that go around. That includes Mowat Road, Cedar Haven, West Ross Road, and Hydro Bay Road. And they're all young families and certainly could use, a gathering spot for a park or whatever, but not that they don't have facilities on their own properties, that's for sure, but it is conducive to that. But again, people come and go, and it's hard to say. The mobile home park is typically seniors. There are some children there. I don't know if they access the park at Cedar Haven Campground or not. And then there used to be a basketball court at the church, the Whitewater Wesleyan Church, and I noticed that the basketball nets were down. I don't know if that's permanently down or not, but all of those aspects that you do have to, when you live out in the country, people realize that they have to drive to go to any sort of park facility, so it's not too bad, but I would like to see some way of knowing when something should be put in place. And I know typically when a plan of subdivision goes into place, there is a portion of which land or in monies in lieu of land for parkland has to be put aside for parkland. So that normally happens with a plan of subdivision, but none of these areas were ever subject to a plan of subdivision, even though there's a number of what used to be cottages are now permanent homes. Torn down cottages and built up permanent homes. So it has increased the population in that area for sure.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Thank you, Nicole. And thank Wayne for us. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.9, Whitewater Seniors Home Support and Active Living. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region. 1, approve the Memorandum of Understanding with agency partners for the continued operation of the Whitewater Seniors Home Support and Activity Living Pilot. 2, approve the terms of reference for the MOU working group. And 3, authorize the execution of a letter of intent with Michael Conroy for the use of the space at 1765 Beechburg Road. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Grieve Regier. And I have no idea who this goes to. Neil? Ivan?
Yeah, I could provide some highlights, and Neil, as the lead on the Whitewater Seniors group, could certainly provide some input as well. But essentially, council passed a resolution on June 1st to extend the Whitewater Seniors pilot, which has been tremendously successful, from July 1st to the end of the year. So on the second page of the report, it does outline what decision council made. So renew the MOU, extend the pilot, provide for an operating budget of $10,000, hire a term employee. And so essentially, this is a report to follow that up. So since then, through the seniors working group, we've been able to draft a revised memorandum of understanding with the agency partners, Whitewater Seniors Home Support, and as well as approve terms of reference with the for the MOU with the working group, and we've been able to essentially obtain a revised letter of intent or lease with Mr. Conroy for the space in Beechburg. So the motion or the motion here is that council move forward with the approval of the MOU, the terms of reference, and authorize the execution of the lease. If there's any more questions, I could try to help answer them, or Councillor Nicholson can also provide support. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson?
No, Ivan's got it all. If there's any questions, I can help.
Okay. Any questions from council? Good. Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.10, firefighter training site. Recommendation to designate 6 acres on the southwest corner of Colesmith Road and Blind Line for a fire department training site. This location is centrally located within the township and remote from residential development. Motion and a seconder, please. Reeve Regier and Councillor McLaughlin. And this goes to Jonathan, please.
Thank you. So as was discussed earlier with our mandatory training and the closure of the Gravenhurst Fire College campus, training has kind of been pushed to the forefront of a lot of departments, ourselves included. And it's really pointed out the need to establish some type of area where we can train, where we're not at risk of damaging our equipment, residential buildings, township buildings, and not disrupting our neighbors. So many sites were looked at. This one was chosen for a number of reasons. One of them being that the township already owns the property, so there's no cost there. It's also lands that can't be developed for anything else, as it's a buffer to the landfill site. It's easily accessible from both Colesmith and Blind Line, now that there's been some work done to open up that road allowance. And all that material actually came from the rehabilitation of Cameron Street, so it needed to go somewhere anyway, so it was a good use of it, and it was kind of, rather than move it twice, it was only had to be done once. So moving forward, we'd like to see this develop into a structure made of sea containers. They're relatively cheap, very durable, accessible. And then this would be phased in. Hopefully next year, 3 sea containers, and then a roof structure in the future, and possibly a water source, i.e. a cistern, at some point. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Mackay.
Once you get this up and running, will you be able to rent it out to other fire departments, or lend it to them? I don't know if you rent it.
There's been some preliminary talk with neighboring departments about use of the facility. It's difficult to iron out any kind of a firm agreement until we get land and it in place, but that would be the intent, to be able to share this in some fashion with neighboring communities.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Jackson?
I note there has been some development down there as well already, and I guess what more work needs to be done down at the site, because it is off the end of the Blind Line, and we can see it off of Colesmith Road now, the improvements to that road. Is that all the improvements that are going to happen, or is there more improvements that will happen afterwards?
On the actual site, the topsoil will have to be stripped down, and then a pad of aggregate put down. Hopefully most of that is going to be recycled from other uses. Working with the building department to determine exactly what the foundation per se, or the pad for these sea containers would have to be. And then there'd be some work with drainage to make sure that there's no flooding issues or anything like that. Because when we're using water, obviously there's going to be some runoff. Make sure that it's appropriately sloped towards the ditches and things like that.
And then one further question, is this the property that was purchased years ago for landfill purposes at some point in time?
I believe it was purchased as a buffer, and it cannot be used as a landfill, but possibly Ivan would be able to speak to that a little bit better than me.
Yeah, so the purchase was purchased for that, but it's not part of the CAZ, so.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And the other question is it the intention to build a classroom there, or a classroom in an existing building that we already have?
The classroom would be down the road, and it would likely, if it were to happen, like this isn't going to happen the next year or two, would probably be like a mobile trailer, like an ATCO trailer or something like that.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a permanent structure.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin?
I guess my question to Jonathan is, because it's a buffer zone and you're going to, is there any restrictions, or have you spoke to the building inspector to see if there's restrictions on whether or where?
Yeah, this has been discussed with the building department as well as the planning department.
No, I just wanted to make sure that because it's a buffer zone, and I know it was a buffer zone I can't remember the exact date it was bought, but I remember buying it. Thank you so much, because I've been questioned many times about the entrance off of the blind line. Who's doing it, why are they doing it, and why?
Mystery solved.
Yes, and thank you so much.
Just a quick note of information. Years ago, when Prime Minister Jean Chrétien came up to celebrate the 25th anniversary at Wilderness Tours and went rafting, and then he went to men's night, that's actually where he changed into his golf clothes down that road, Lawrence.
That was a long time ago. We need to put up a sign there. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Fire Chief. This is a great proposal, and I think it's one of those, we have the property, we're taking advantage of the location, and I think that, you know, we have the momentum in the fire department for this kind of thing. I think we should be encouraging it, and the partnerships will come, I believe, and there'll be other investment and opportunities for us to build on the successes that we can do in-house with a little bit of money here and there. So thank you for this.
And now with all the new young blood, now's the time to move.
It certainly is. The culture is changing, and the emphasis on training has been existent through most of their careers. So it's, you know, like Councillor Nicholson said, there's some momentum there, and it's become part of the culture. So hopefully we continue that with an investment in building a structure where we can do some of the things we're struggling to do right now.
Yeah, eventually it'll be part of your working capital, so I mean, it'll just, you won't even notice it's there. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. 611, Fire Department nozzle tender. Recommendation of the Council of Township of Whitewater Region award tender number 2022-11 to A.J. Stone for the purchase of 15 low-pressure nozzles at a cost of $17,797.50, including HST. Motion is seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson. Back to Jonathan, please.
So one of the goals of the fire department is to standardize some of our equipment. And this is one opportunity to standardize our most often used nozzles. We're going to take this opportunity to also introduce low pressure nozzles. They flow the same volume as our historical nozzles, but at a lower pressure, so they're easier to maneuver. There's less nozzle reaction, so it's easier for the firefighter to handle, whether it's inside or outside of structure. There's a number of tenders received. A.J. Stone's Metro 1 tender was the lowest that met all the requirements. And it comes in just under budget.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Jackson?
Was this actually on the budget for 2022? And what was the budget?
It was, and 17,000.
17,000, and it was on the budget. Thank you.
Sir McLaughlin.
Jonathan, does this change all the nozzles? You said 17. There was a reason you ordered 17?
We ordered 15, basically 3 per frontline pump. It will replace all our pre-connect lines that are 1.5 inches. So all the ones that we're normally going to deploy on a fire. The intent is next year to do the same with the 2.5-inch nozzles that we use more often for exposures or fires of a defensive nature. But there'll only be probably 5 of those. They're not nearly as prevalent as the 1.5 inch.
So what I understand is that you're standardizing that all the certain sized ones will have these nozzles? Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And it does a few things. It makes it a little easier for our operators, kind of discuss the nozzle pressure, but it is also easier for our pump operators. They know exactly what nozzle's on the end of every hose, so they can set the pump pressure accordingly. It's one of the challenges we've had in the past. Different gallonage of nozzles, different types of nozzles require different flows from the pump. So this will help alleviate some of those challenges.
And that's what I like to hear, because I like to see everything standardized. You know, if it's a certain thing, these are the ones we have, this size for this, that size, rather than having each station having a different system. I like to see it all standardized, and I think that's what we need to do, and I appreciate it. I think you're doing the right thing going forward.
I agree completely on the standardization.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.12, Edmundston Bromley Whitewater Region Fire Department Automatic Aid Agreement. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region renew the automatic aid and extrication agreements with the Township of Edmundston Bromley through the December 31st, 2026. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson, and this goes back to Jonathan or Ivan. Who's doing this?
I believe I am.
Okay.
There has been an automatic aid agreement in place between Whitewater and Edmundston Bromley Township for many, many years. This is just renewing that agreement. It provides first response for areas that are closer to either the Cobden or Haley Station fire halls versus Douglas's fire station. The auto extrication component has been in place since the auto extrication county boundaries were redone probably 2011 or somewhere in that realm. So there was very few adjustments to it, a couple very minor amendments that Edmundston Bromley were receptive to. The fees will remain the same, $7,000 for essentially the automatic aid, the fire suppression component. And then the heavy rescue auto extrication, $1,000 administrative fee, and then charge the MTO rate per hour. And one thing I should clarify, after 1 hour of response into their area under the automatic aid agreement, it turns into mutual aid where there's no remuneration anyway. So if we're there more than an hour, we would be there anyway under a different agreement.
Any questions? Clear as mud. Councillor McLaughlin?
Jonathan, I thought that when you say $7,000, I thought there was somewhere that every year that cost would go up a little bit. Was that in the past?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
When looking at the numbers, and we did pull the calls for the last 3 years, $7,000 does seem to be a reasonable rate. I don't think either side is being taken advantage of.
Well, especially when you've told me that after 1 hour we would be there anywhere as mutual, and I don't have a problem. I thought somewhere that it was in the agreement that back, but I could be wrong.
I'm not aware of that, but
But if you say 7,000, then that's because now I realize that it's only 1 hour.
Yeah.
The $7,000, that's all that covers is 1 hour, and then after that, it's mutual aid.
yeah, which there's no exchange of funds, and they would help us, we would help them. It's and it's county.
One helps the other.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
But that's only for fire calls. That's not for extrication. Extrication is different. Okay? Let's not get them mixed up. Extrication, you generally aren't there for more than an hour anyway. But under fire conditions, you can be. So.
One question under extrication.
Go ahead.
So, no matter where it is in Edmundston Bromley, we charge the MTO rate?
In the area that we cover for extrication, we don't do the whole Edmundston Bromley area, but what we cover, we bill Edmundston Bromley the MTO rate.
The MTO rate, okay.
If possible, they will then bill the MTO. We don't bill the MTO directly like we would within our own
You just
township.
bill it right to Edmundston Bromley. Okay,
Yeah, that's
thank you. I
correct.
thought that's the way, when I read it, I thought that's what it was. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Jackson?
Just looking through the agreement, is the agreement supposed to recognize the $7,000, or is that a separate agreement? I don't see the fees in there, in the actual agreement, just in the report? Like the actual dollar amount?
I believe it's in the agreement, but I don't think there's a separate table for it. I think it's just written in there.
Section 12 is severability?
It's the, there's two section 12s on, go to page 12 of 13 in your attachment.
Oh, it's a different agreement, yeah.
Yeah, and then it says in that first number 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was only looking at the first one.
So clear as mud, everybody good? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now you move on to 6.13, CCHL Tier 2 Hockey Team Agreement. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve a bylaw to execute a rental agreement with the Pembroke Pembroke Junior A Lumber Kings Hockey Club Limited for the use of the Cobden Arena by the Whitewater Kings. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay, Councillor Nicholson, and this goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. And just for as a point of clarity here is that this is a contract renewal for the Whitewater Kings and not the Junior A team. It's the Junior B team. Just the legal representative name is the Pembroke Junior A Lumber Kings Hockey Club Limited. Essentially, council gave direction to staff to at its June 22nd, 2022 meeting to report back on a potential multi-year agreement with a viable junior team for this upcoming year and for future years. As part of that, we wanted to ensure that there was timely payment of fees and including deposits. Essentially, the township, with support from Councillor Olmsted, we've been in conversations with Alex Armstrong, which is the owner of the current club that has rented our Cobden Astrolabe Arena facility for the last number of years, and he has agreed to a multi-year contract. The contract is attached to the report as attachment number 1. Highlights of the agreement are as follows. Term would be for a 3-year term plus 2 1-year renewal options. Term period again from September to April. Continued use of the office spaces and those 2 dressing rooms at the back. So non-exclusive use of the dressing rooms, but exclusive use of the office and storage space, which is the same as it was before. One thing to note here, previous fees were $1,000. The new fees are $2,000. So we've increased the fees for that storage and office space. Ice allocation remains the same. Practice times remain 1.5 hours. However, they used to have Wednesday nights from 8:30 till 10 and Thursday nights at the same time. Because of the closing of the Beechburg rink, we're trying to find additional gaps to support minor hockey. And Alex has agreed to take in an earlier time on Wednesday from 4:15 to 5:45. So that'll open up some of the prime time ice in the evening for our Muskrat hockey and other hockey leagues. Games continue to occur on Saturday and Sundays. Fees will be per the fees and charges bylaw. There were some, as I understand it in my review of the previous agreement, some discounts for the practice times. But he's agreed to paying the fees as per the agreement, so $185 an hour for prime time, and at any time before 5 p.m. is at a rate of $145.64. So that's exactly how it's worded in our agreement. To ensure payment of all fees, we are going to require a deposit of $5,000 that needs to be filed by September 1st. The deposit will be used to credit any money owing. So how this works is we invoice on a monthly basis after a month of use. The proponent has 30 days to pay the invoice. In any which case where the invoice is not paid, we would use the deposit. And the agreement has been sort of fortified, if you will, such that we could restrict ice time to the club if payment are in arrears. Maybe the second last piece to note here, Advertising is subject to a fee. Previously, they had a couple ice advertisements for no cost. We're now going to charge them a fee for that. So additional revenue in the shape of storage and office space, additional revenue with the advertising, and additional revenue with the hourly rates. They've provided some accommodation with ice time for practices as well. The last thing to note is the agreement you'll see attached. The previous agreements were about 3 to 5 pages long. New one is substantially more extensive. It's been reviewed by our solicitor as well to ensure that we have our liabilities in check and our protections. So staff are comfortable in moving forward with this. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. And certainly Sean could support me in answering any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I don't see it in this agreement, and I've tried to quickly look through it, but the concession stand, and I note in section 12B, they're responsible for collection and remittance of any taxes related to any sales, including but not limited to concession sales. Who's looking after the concession stand? Because that was an issue with minor hockey when the junior team was running the concession. Are we running it? Are they running it? Are they giving specific hours if they are running it? Can you help me with that?
Yeah, so the last year in the agreement with Alex, he was not to run the concession stand. He was offered an opportunity to submit a proposal as part of an RFP process. We do have our new recreation assistant, Courtney, working on an RFP right now. So we are going to issue an RFP in the next number of weeks with hopes to try to secure a company or somebody to operate the space through an RFP process, through a lease agreement with the township, similar to at the Beechburg rink. If we are unsuccessful in that, we'd have to look at other options to try to get the space used. Thanks.
So under 12B, should concession sales come out of there? If they're not responsible for the concession, why would they be responsible for paying the taxes on the concession sales?
I would say that certainly I'll review that section, Councillor Jackson. I know that the section just before that speaks to revenue generated as part of team novelty, so jerseys and hats.
Right.
Maybe subsection B speaks to them paying their taxes and remittance in accordance with the sale of those novelties, perhaps.
Which could be for sale at the concession stand? Or do they
No,
sell them separately?
Those separately,
So
they're not being
again,
used.
concession
Yeah.
sales should probably be eliminated.
I'll review it, yeah. Thanks.
And you'll let me know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think there's probably a better way to say that. With us, we think concession being the food booth. So I guess from this day forward, maybe when the RFP comes out that it does state not concession, but state food concession, maybe that will help Ivan. And everything will be kept clear. Councillor Mackay.
Didn't we have some money problems with these guys last year? Just asking in a rude way.
Yes, but everything's caught up.
So it's all straightened up. We're best friends again.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Nicholson.
Just a question on their hours. Are they committed to so many hours every season? Like they have those windows. Can they opt out of them for weekly practices?
Yeah, so they have to notify us 7 days in advance. Otherwise, they'll be invoiced for the time. So yeah, if they don't have a practice, they don't want to practice that day, they don't have to. And if we could fill it, then they don't pay the fee. But if we can't fill it, then they're responsible for the cost.
Excellent. No, I think this is a great graduation. Like this has gone. This agreement has improved over the number of years, so I congratulate staff on the work that they put into this. Thank you so much.
And that one thing that you were talking about happened in other arenas as well over the years, and that's where we've learned our lesson. Hockey teams that book for a block at a time, and they decide, okay, Saturday we're going sledding instead of ball practice or hockey practice, but then wouldn't tell anybody, wouldn't show up. So you've got employees there and ice sitting there, and people coming in saying, how come we can't use the ice? There's nobody on it, you know. It caused a lot of problems inside, so it's nice to have that talked through. Any other questions? Seeing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.14, Joint Election Compliance Audit. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to establish a Joint Election Compliance Audit Committee, 2022-2026. Terms of reference and appointment is its members. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson, Councillor Mackay, and this goes to Carmen, please.
Okay, so the election's coming up, and the Municipal Act, or sorry, the Elections Act requires us to establish a compliance audit committee. So we went together, 4 years ago, we went together with the Laurentian Valley, City of Pembroke, Town of Renfrew, and Whitewater Region to, we each selected somebody for the committee, and they acted as our joint compliance audit committee. We reached out to the same people again. They're willing to do it. So our recommendation is to select these people, and same sort of agreement, same terms as 4 years ago for the election. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Just one, does it have to, do they have to sign an agreement, or it's just a bylaw to appoint?
A bylaw to appoint with terms of reference.
So that will come at a different time, or is that here?
It is on here. It's
okay. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.15, Code of Conduct Update. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region, the Council of the Township received the report from Cunningham Swan as it relates to a Code of Conduct complaint. Does this go to Ivan?
Well, first we need a mover.
Oh, sorry, we need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. And then we'll go to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. So what this agenda item refers to is the report that was prepared by Tony Fleming, who's our Integrity Commissioner, who works with Cunningham Swan Lawyers. It's his report in response to a Code of Conduct complaint on January 31st, 2022. So it's his findings of his investigation. That report was circulated to the members of council via email for your information and for your consideration. Essentially, there's two parts that need to be considered here by council. One is how we will receive and make the report public. And secondly, whether or not council will proceed with the recommendation from Mr. Fleming, which is recommending that a reprimand be provided to Councillor Olmsted with respect to his behavior and the code of conduct. So the first part is the report itself. Essentially, Carmen and I have drafted a recommendation. So the way we would, and this is based on guidance from Mr. Fleming, so we would receive the Code of Conduct report by adding the report as an attachment to our minutes of tonight's meeting, the August 3rd meeting, and that would be published on our website, and they'd become public, and this report would become public. And this is how it's done in other situations in other communities. And issue essentially the recommendation from the findings is that Mr. Fleming recommends that council issue a reprimand to Councillor Olmsted to remind the councillor of the standard of behavior expected of all members in all circumstances as it pertains to his breach of the Code of Conduct. So one, that council would receive the report, receive the Code of Conduct report, add the report as an attachment to the minutes, and issue a reprimand by letter to Councillor Chris Olmsted for breaching the Code of Conduct as outlined in the report from Mr. Fleming. So that summarizes the situation, and so basically council has to, they could deliberate if they wish, but we need to determine how we're going to receive the report, make it public, and whether or not a reprimand will be issued to Mr. Olmsted. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, I would recommend that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the Code of Conduct report and add the report to an attached to the minutes of the August 3rd, 2022 meeting, and issue a reprimand letter to Councillor Chris Olmsted for breaching the Code of Conduct as outlined in the July 7th, 2022 report provided by Tony Fleming, Cunningham and Swan. Mover and seconder, please. Seeing none, motion is dead.
Maybe if I could just add, so I understand that the motion that was put forth there included the reprimand piece, perhaps a motion that was reworded just to receive the report and add the report as an attachment to the minutes. It has to be made public, so that could be a motion. Perhaps Clerk Miller, you could work that out in the council chambers, please.
So, yeah, if it's okay with everybody, we'll separate it in half. So if you want to just read the first part of the motion, and then we'll get a mover and seconder on that.
That the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the Code of Conduct report. Is that the first? And attach it to the minutes of August 3, 2022.
Yes.
That is the first motion. Do we need a first and a seconder? Need a first mover and a seconder. Re-regular Councillor Nicholson. And now we need a mover and a seconder for the second half?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, sorry, we'll vote on the first one. All in favor of the first motion? 3-2, carried, thank you. And the second part is?
Would that not be 3-3?
Pardon me?
We just need I don't think we need to vote on it. Nobody asked for a vote. We just need an all in favor. Is that what?
Nobody asked for a vote?
Well, but you said 3-2, and there's 6 of us sitting here.
Oh, sorry, I didn't include myself. Sorry. So be 4-2.
Doesn't matter. Is it
Okay.
all in favor?
Yeah, it's all in favor, 4-2. All in favor? Yeah. Okay, so the second part. Issue a reprimand by letter to Councillor Chris Olmsted for breaching the Code of Conduct as outlined in the July 7, 2022 report provided by Tony Fleming, Cunningham, and Swan. Motion and a seconder, please. So not carried, so
It's not.
it's done.
It's dead.
Yep.
Rejected. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, so then this is null and void then, because we did it there.
It's not null and void. No, we're good. We're on the next we're on notice of motion now.
Okay.
It's all taken care of.
Okay, so this is,
Yep, got it.
okay, now if we go any farther, we're going to run out of time here. Motion to extend. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Mackay.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, so now we go to notice of motion. There was nothing in writing, but Councillor McLaughlin has requested a notice of motion.
I have, I don't know how to word it, but I'm looking for direction from council. It came to my attention that there's no legal parking in Forster's Falls when we do the new sidewalks and the bike lane. There will not be any parking and legal parking in the village. And I would like it discussed with council, but I need a seconder. There is no legal parking. You can ask Lane about that.
So if I can clarify, Councillor McLaughlin would like it discussed tonight. So in order to get it on the table, we need a 2/3 vote.
So I have a mover and a seconder. So I'd ask,
Did we have a seconder? Councillor Mackay was the seconder?
No.
No?
I'm sorry, Councillor.
To be to put the thing on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need, so in order, yeah, so Councillor McLaughlin would like a notice of motion to discuss parking on Forster's Falls. In order to,
After construction.
after discussion, sorry, or construction. So then we need, in order to he wants to discuss it tonight, but because it's not on the agenda, we need a 2/3 vote.
but I
To
needed
put
a
it-
seconder to get the motion on the table. Isn't that correct?
You need a 2/3 vote, so.
Yeah, but to
Need a
vote.
seconder.
Sorry, okay, yeah.
Seconder was Councillor Mackay.
To get the vote, I needed a seconder. I have a seconder. And now can we then proceed with the vote from the township, from the councillor?
Can we do just a show of hands?
Yeah.
Okay, a show of hands of all in favor to discuss this motion. Carried. We have 2/3.
I only need 4.
Okay. So is that the extent, or can we turn it over to Lane at this point?
Well, you can turn it over to Lane. It came aware to me after the open house. I got numerous phone calls about it, saying that, and I was not aware that there's no legal, you cannot legally park. Lane, I'll turn it over to Lane, knows better. So I'll pass it to Lane then.
Thank you. Yes, so part of the open house, some of the residents concerned that the parking would be taken away. With the open house, with myself and our representatives from the county, the actual layout of the actual platform, there's two 3.4 meter lanes of the actual driving lanes. On each side of that, there's a gutter. Then either side of that, there's a 1.5 meter boulevard, which is asphalt, and then there's a 1.5 meter sidewalk on each side. The actual boulevard is not actually a parking lane. It's a boulevard. It could be grass. It could be, in this case, it's asphalt. It could be gravel, for example. It's not actually a parking spot because it's not wide enough. Because most parking lanes, the designated parking lane is minimum 2.5, and they're actually someone parking in that boulevard area. They're actually extending onto the roadway. And talking to colleagues at the county, and they're telling the resident that they were actually parking illegally on that. My understanding, they don't. They do have a parking bylaw. But they don't. I believe they don't have actually a bylaw officer to enforce it. But that wouldn't. But if OPP would see that and could potentially blocking traffic, they could ticket it. There is no signage stating that there's no parking. And then going with the multi-use pathway, we'll actually get rid of that. We'll change that 1.5 boulevard, and the 1.5 meter asphalt will turn into a 3 meter a multi-use pathway, which you can't park on anyway. But it will leave the other side of the road. We'll have that we'll have the same configuration right now. Hopefully that explains.
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, I'm not sure right now that there's legal parking on Forsters Falls Road in Forsters Falls now anyways, because I know previously working in the falls that people would park part on the slant and part on the actual sidewalk, that they never really, I don't know that there's enough room. I'm just wondering why they wouldn't design it so that there is enough room. I understand that there is, looking at, because of the sidewalks and because of the ask today for the crosswalk, I wondered why was there sidewalks on both sides. There is, obviously they want to cross over to reach the store on one side to be able to access that. I just don't understand why they wouldn't widen the road if there is the ability to widen the road to allow for parking, because some of the homes only have parking for perhaps one parking space in their driveway and utilize the road all the time to park on the road. When the Orange Hall was in operation, there was all kinds of parking on the road. The church has no parking. Where are they going to park for church services? There's a lot of issues there. I agree with Councillor McLaughlin, and thank you for bringing it forward tonight, because it's important that they resolve some of those issues. And I don't know how we can facilitate that, because the design has already been designed, my understanding, but they should have taken into consideration parking, because it is of utmost importance in that small hamlet.
if I can answer that. Yeah, so the actual, if you wanted to put the parking in where on the opposite side of the multi-use pathway, the actual hydro poles are actually in that boulevard area. So you couldn't, you wouldn't actually have room to widen that without actually moving the hydro poles.
Like I said, I think legally right now, they're probably illegally parking and have been for years, but they've been parking. But now if they're saying that there is going to be no legal parking and there is going to be some issues with it, then they should have recognized that they needed to address that issue. And I don't know if it's been brought up to the county, how they should address that issue, but I think it's important, now that we're aware of it, that we make sure that the county does something about it. Because what other county road is there that doesn't allow for parking? I don't know of any. So there should be parking along there. Like it's something that's been utilized for years, whether it's legal or illegal. It has been utilized. They know it's a need. It's certainly a need for a number of business, like the businesses of Annie's store people need to park somewhere. There's not enough parking spaces in her driveway. There's not enough parking spaces, I don't know of any parking for the church. There's parking in the back for the library, but very little parking. So this, the museum, where are they gonna park? Doesn't make sense to me why they didn't address this issue and ensure that there was proper parking available when they're redoing a small hamlet like that. And if they need to move the hydro poles, then they need to move the hydro poles. But, and I understand there is a cost to that, or at least identify where they could park where the hydro poles aren't. Like, there has to be some way of recognizing that there's parking somewhere there.
Okay, I agree. And one thing that just popped into my head here, there's some places in Beechburg where the roads don't allow for parking, but people do park. And it's not posted, and Forsters Falls is not posted as well. So I don't know at this point what spurred the cause of no parking, and I don't quite understand it, but something must have come out of the meeting where it was stated that from now on there'd be no more parking. Well, if there's not going to be any parking, then they have to post it, and their bylaw enforcement has to look after it. So until that happens, I wouldn't worry about it. But this is, now that it's at our attention, we certainly have to get back to the county to find out if there's any options at this time. Councillor Nicholson.
No, I just wanted to clarify, because I don't think there's any parking on the county road in Westmeath, and I don't think there's any parking on the county road in Beechburg, other than the boulevards. Sorry?
But they park.
Yeah.
On the
Well, I
road.
just don't, but I mean.
By Kenny's store, they park.
Yeah. But you can't, and I'm at a loss, I haven't driven through Forsters Falls if this new development's in there, but you can't park there now?
People park now.
So Forsters Falls is the same as Westmeath? But.
So if I can add, so the vehicle actually being parked onto the actual boulevard itself, which is not a designated parking spot. Council's right, as per the county bylaw, it doesn't state there's no parking. They have certain roads in the county roads, but Forster Falls is not one of them. But their bylaws does state that you can't block a sidewalk, you can't park on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And also, in one point, it said that you can't within 3 meters of the edgeway. They don't really speak to more, the bylaw doesn't really speak to more urbanized area. Like this is paying thing to more for a rural road. And how it came up is from the open house. That's when it came about, and people asked where they're going to park, and the county's response was that they're not supposed to park there anyway. So that was their response. The one thing I have to clarify, I'm not certain is if parking is responsible of the lower tier or not. It's one thing I have to figure I'm not aware of right now. So if that was the case, if council wanted to direct that, to find out that if it's the lower tier municipality or if it's county municipality responsibility. Going forward, the plans are, so the contract has been awarded starting next Monday. If something's going to be drastic change, as including it to have a designated parking lane, that has to be addressed now, or it's maybe not too late, but it's definitely going to delay construction. And looking at the cross section, the only potential solution would be to remove the actual multi-use pathway and make it actually a designated parking area. But you'd lose that sidewalk. So people have to park on the opposite road and cross the road to get to the sidewalk, which is not great practice.
Okay, Ivan?
Yeah, I think Lane just answered my questions. One was timeline for construction. I think maybe as a follow-up to this, again, I haven't investigated the project. I know there's a multi-use pathway that crosses the road. That's about as familiar I am with it, but certainly maybe if we could, Lane and I could communicate with the engineers to see if we were to develop on-street parking, like similar to Cobden, for example, what width of road or paved section do you need, and see if it actually exists. Maybe it doesn't, maybe the width in that area doesn't exist, but I think we need to maybe just in the very, very short term, in the next day or so, communicate with the engineer, the county, and see if there's an opportunity for this and see how it could potentially work. I think the other thing Lane noted is who's responsible for the cost. And I'm not sure what happened here in Cobden, but certainly that's an example that we could look at and see whether or not the township was responsible for anything between the curb and the parking and the sidewalks. I think we might have been, so it's just a matter of how we're going to fund that. So perhaps you could leave it with us for the next day or so, and maybe we could report back to council via email with some more details. I'll be glad to, if you want to keep discussing it and provide some input, certainly that'll have some value in the next steps we take. Thanks.
I certainly think the next step is to investigate and maybe get some reasonings as to why and what the regs are and how wide the total area has to be, because I don't think the area of Forsters Falls with hydro poles meets that criteria. So, Councillor Nicholson.
Just kill a couple of birds. If there's a parking problem on all county roads in the township, then address that perspective. If we're going to do Forsters Falls today and then we're going to do Beechburg in a week, and then we can't afford to do all 3 or 4 areas there's county roads. So find a solution if possible for everything while trying to meet the timeline for Forsters Falls. So I would recommend, Mayor.
And I think Ivan had the great idea.
And there may be sections of the road which will allow parking, and if they could identify those, maybe not on both sides, but maybe certain sections of the road that could, between telephone poles, I don't know, and not on the sidewalk, but without actually seeing boots on the ground and saying, okay, this is going to work or not work, but maybe ask the county to see what they suggest. Because there will be parking along the side of the road, and if certain, and I'm not putting it out there, but you could have certain residents complain to the police and say they're illegal parking, and then all of a sudden it becomes a civil nightmare between neighbors saying you can't park and I'm calling the police. I don't want to see that. I want to see a good end result that allows for parking somewhere along the side, because we know there needs to be parking to access some of the services that are in the falls at this time.
Sorry, yeah, definitely, and we'll follow up with Ivan's suggestion and provide an email and then talk to the county and for the items. The one thing to note that the existing where the sidewalk is currently, there'll still be that 1.5 boulevard area. that won't change from what it is now, but still illegal parking. Exactly.
Not posted. There's nothing posted. Yeah, could be starting a snowball effect. Councillor Mackay.
It just seems like Renfrew County can't do anything. They just do what they want to do. It's like a Nazi regime.
Well, this is where we have to speak up. This is where we get Ivan to speak up on your behalf. Okay, so we're leaving this in Ivan's hands then? Okay, thank you, Ivan, for taking hold of this. So, do we need a motion to carry on, or we're fine?
I guess, all in favor, we need an all in favor.
Okay, we need an all in favor for Ivan to continue. Carried, thank you. Ivan, you got the green light. Now, adoption of minutes.
Well, do you want to see if anybody else has notice of motion?
Oh, does anyone else have notice of motion? Sorry. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 8.1, regular council. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region to approve the regular minutes of June 22nd, 2022, and the closed session minutes of June 22nd, 2022, understanding that they remain confidential. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Reeve Rigier. All in favor? Carried, thank you. 8.2, Special Council, June 27th. Recommendation of the Council of Township of Whitewater Region to approve the special minutes of June 27th, 2022. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Mackay, Councillor McLaughlin. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Correspondence, thank you for the Westmeath Rec for our participation in the golf tournament. And Reeve Rigier, as stated, did have the relay, and we're waiting on more information, I believe.
Yeah, that is correct. So there is, that will be coming forward. We'll have more details following on that, but I will be participating in that.
And it is Saturday, August 20, when that happens. So it's a relay for the length of the Algonquin Trail.
Correct.
And there will be a stop in Cobden.
A stop in Cobden, and they will present us with a golden spike.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll move on now to...
Can we talk about, I don't know if Ivan wants to address...
Ivan, did you want to address 9.3, or are we just going to discuss it, or are we just going to say it's for information purposes?
I could speak to it very briefly. You want me to go ahead now, or?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so essentially there's been, so Gail Bishop, she's the president of the Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Association. Councillors might be aware that this spring there was quite a backup of the water on the two lakes. And that's as a result of beaver dams on basically the Muskrat River or creek that flows from Olmsted Jeffrey Lake to Muskrat Lake. So it goes under the highway where they're doing the construction now. But essentially, Gail, as the president, she is trying to find solutions to trap the beavers. And essentially, she's looking for council to support through funds the trapping of these beavers. So essentially, this is a reoccurring problem that they've been having. The beavers, unfortunately, they're not removing the beavers; they just keep demolishing the dams, or demolishing the dams. When she contacted me, I said we don't have a grant program like our recreation grant or our tourism and event grant doesn't support the paying for these supporting these removal of beavers, and also the beavers are not causing any damage to municipal infrastructure. So in the case where they would be blocking up culverts or what may it be, and it's damaging or affecting our road network, we would get involved and we'd use through Lane and the Public Works. We deal with that. But in this case, it's all privately held lands. The lake is privately held. So we don't really have a source of funding. So she's sort of petitioning through the association to council to try to find funds. I would say you receive it now. You could have some conversation around it. You could receive the correspondence. You could discuss it with me after. It's really up to you how you wish to proceed. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, that was information only, so no questions. We'll move on. Thank you. We'll move on to bylaws, 10.1. A recommendation be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the August 3rd, 2022 agenda be taken as read and passed. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Adjourn. It's 8:05 p.m. All in favor? Carried, thank you.